Good afternoon, members. Very good afternoon and welcome to the National Infrastructure and Growth Scrutiny Panel. I need to read through this little brief and to dispense with the formalities, so just bear with me. Before we start these proceedings, may I bring to your attention some housekeeping matters. There is no expected fire alarm testing today. Therefore, if the fire alarm should sound, please follow the signs to the nearest fire exit and meet at the fire assembly point near the Cafe Roma in the Civic Square. There's a public plug for Cafe Roma. Please can I ask that you use your microphone when addressing the meeting and that it's switched off when you're not using it. Your mobile device, it should be turned to silent. And of course, this meeting will be broadcast live to the many thousands online watching on the internet and will be capable of subsequent repeated viewing by entering this room, and during the course of this meeting, councillors and officers and members of the public are consenting to being filmed and to the use of those recordings for webcasting. There we go, got through that, thank you. Very warm welcome, and particularly to newly elected councillors who join us at Scrutiny. Some members who were elected prior to the recent local election may also be new on Scrutiny, but very warm welcome to those new councillors. I do hope you enjoy the process. Scrutiny is a great environment to really understand what happens in the local authority. And I'm sure you have been briefed by your respective party and colleagues. Scrutiny should be, rightly so, non-political. We're here to scrutinise. We'll leave the politics to the days in the chamber at full council, but Scrutiny should be non-political, helping us understand what the local authority are doing and what the plans look like going forward. There's little to be gained if we start bringing politics into these types of meetings. So I'd be grateful if you could just remember that. And finally, Councillor Holloway is Vice Chair, which we'll vote on in a moment, or note on. Should you wish to take part in the debate, it's Charlotte's attention you need to grab and she'll add you to the list. All right? Super. So on with the agenda. First and foremost, to note the appointment of Councillor Ian Darcy as Chair and Councillor Charlotte Holloway as Vice Chair for the Natural Infrastructure and Growth Scrutiny Panel for 24-25. Is that duly noted? Great, thank you very much, and congratulations, Vice Chair. Item 2, apologies. Hannah, do we have any apologies, please?
We've received apologies from Councillor Allen and Councillor Freeman is substituting. We've received apologies from Councillor Matt Smith and Councillor Noble is substituting.
Thank you. Item number 3, members, this is declarations of interest. If you've had a look at the agenda in the papers, now is the opportunity to make any declarations of interest in respect of the items today.
Apologies. Yes, I've got one to note. I'm on the board of the Plymouth Waterfront Partnership.
So that's a personal interest. Thank you. Any more? Great, thank you. Item number 4, Scrutiny Panel Responsibilities. This is pages 1 and 2 of your packs, members. And I ask you to note the responsibilities of this Scrutiny Panel. Trust you've had a chance to look through that. I'm grateful that's noted, yes? Thank you. Item number 5, minutes. They're set out at pages 3 to 24 of your papers. Again, I trust you've had the opportunity to read those. Invite any comments in regards to those minutes. Otherwise, if you're content, I'll sign those as an accurate. Oh, Councillor Rainsford.
Can I ask questions based on what's in the minutes? So page 9, little e, David Draffin said the committee could be provided with a half-page report and more detail. Have we asked for that report? Is question 1. And I'll do question 2 while I'm at it because it's sort of linked. Page 11, item 1, the follow-up letter to Sir John Whittingdale. We hadn't received a reply by the general election. I wondered whether the committee were going to follow up and do a letter to the current minister.
Sorry, Councillor, can you give me those page references again?
Sorry, page 9 of the actual report, which will be page 11, I guess. No, yes, page 11 if you're looking at computer pages. Page 9, got it? Little e. It says the committee could be provided with a half-page report with more detail on the productivity issue. Have we asked for one? Have we asked for a half-page report?
Well, this relates to the previous meeting. I don't know, but David
no,
Draffin is here, so he'll be able to answer
okay.
that
Okay.
directly. It would have been under a previous chair.
So just to confirm, we did ask for it and circulated it. I can go back through my emails and resend it to you. That's absolutely no problem.
Thank you. That deals with that. What was the second one?
The second one was the committee agreed to chase Sir John Whittingdale, who was the then minister, I assume. And I wonder whether or not we've had a reply.
We did have a reply. I've also circulated that, but I will recirculate that one as well. Of course, absolutely. So I'll circulate both of those by the end of today.
Chair, I can give a further update on that very briefly, if that's helpful. So you might have seen a recent article as well in the Herald about the requirement for theatres nationally to have investment that relates to the fabric of the buildings as opposed to regeneration development. So I think it's an issue shared with all theatres nationally. It relates to utility costs as well. And James Mackenzie Blackman is on the national committee for theatres. That's where that's come from. So he is advocating incredibly strongly in those spaces. And my feedback is that those conversations are being heard and listening both at Arts Council level and obviously now into government. So James is really doing a good job.
Thank you. Anything else? It's nice to see somebody read the minutes. Great. Well, if there are no other comments, the minutes chaired by Councillor Bingley on the 22nd of February can be approved. Thank you. Item number 6, Chair's urgent business. I'm not advised of any. Super. Item number 7, economic intelligence insight. I believe, Toby, you're going to lead on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, great. Thank you. So, sorry, David.
Chair, I was just going to give some a sentence of context for new members. So this was an item that was introduced by the previous chair, which was sort of a non, it was a regular update. So this is really it's now going to be every 6 months to give you a simple sense of where the economic stats are going. So it's not like a normal where we have a detailed paper. It's just the chance for us to give you those short reflections each time from some of the talent embedded in there, and obviously that allows you really to have that economic intelligence to your fingertips in other decisions. So just give you a little bit of context. So you'll see this every 6 months as a short update.
Great. Thank you. So, we can move on to the first slide. So, as David said, this is it's a very quick 3 slides, but really this is diving into sort of specific trends in some of the latest available data. So this time it's going to have a focus on the labour market, but specifically wages. It's going to have a look at employment data and business data and survivability, and then finally on the creative industries. So this first slide is particularly on that wage piece. So at previous scrutiny in February, I think we touched on some of the data around jobs growth seen in Plymouth, and the fact that we've had 8,000 new jobs in the city, additional jobs in the city from 2018 up to the latest available data, which was 2022. And actually we've seen that is quite an accelerating trend. That's despite the sort of national conditions, post-COVID particularly, there's been really positive trends in growth in new jobs, and they've been driven by additional full-time jobs rather than part-time jobs in the city. And so I think this is further exploring that, particularly around wages. So the top graph you can see there is the top 20% of earners is the orange line, and the bottom 20% of earners in the city is the blue line. And this is a weekly average pay over the last sort of 10 years. And so what you can really see reflected is actually that post-COVID significant increase in both wages. And it's important that, we reflect on both that bottom 20% earners as well as the higher earners in the city. What we're not sort of seeing in that graph is really how that reflects on the national picture as a comparator. And so, I explored that issue, and particularly it's worth noting there was a significant wage gap between Plymouth and the UK in terms of these average salaries for both groups. And actually that gap has been closed quite considerably since 2021. So I think the gap was at its widest around that COVID period, and certainly the last 3 years post-COVID, we've seen pretty significant reductions. And so Plymouth wages closing up to that national average. The bottom graph is exploring part-time and full-time jobs. Again, as I said, almost all the additional jobs we've seen in the city over the last 4 or 5 years were full-time. We can see that the numbers of part-time jobs in the city has remained sort of flat. And I think what we're seeing reflected here is that both resident full-time and workers in Plymouth full-time, they've seen pretty significant increases in their average earnings. Part-time wages have been more stable. They haven't seen as much growth, but partly that's sort of reflected in the gap that existed. So full-time workers in Plymouth earned a lot less than national full-time workers, whereas actually part-time workers in Plymouth were much closer to the national. So we've seen part-time wages sort of stabilise, but actually the full-time earners are closing up to that national average. So it's really positive trends, and yeah, building off those sort of new jobs and additional jobs in the city, hopefully continue to see that gap closing. So just onto the next slide, please. And so on this one, again, I wanted to touch on the sort of latest data around startups and business survival. So the top graph is looking at the number of business startups each year in Plymouth and England compared to 2017. So 2017 is 100, and you can see blue for Plymouth there and orange for the UK average, or for England average, I should say. So what we can reflect here is that actually Plymouth in 2022 had 25% more business startups in the year than it did in 2017. England has remained very flat over that period. And actually, as you can see in the bottom graph, these businesses are surviving. More of them are surviving. So this is 5-year survival rate. This is new businesses that started in 2017. And then after 5 years, that's 2022. And we can see that in Plymouth, far more survive over that 5-year period than they do nationally, and they actually many more survive when compared to the Southwest average as well. Yeah, so we're demonstrating, favourable conditions for businesses, as well as clearly a demand for full-time workers, and higher salaries as a result. And then just onto the final slide, please. So I think previously at Scrutiny, I touched on a different key sector, looking at advanced manufacturing. I think there was interest in sort of bringing back the different key sectors and exploring their sort of contribution and value to our economy. So this time we were looking at creative industries. So, you can see over 3,000 FTE jobs and 150 million GVA provided to the economy, which is really significant, and actually really significant growth, with 10% growth in the number of jobs over only the last 3 years. So that will be 2019 to 2022. So, we're not seeing the last couple of years, which we'd expect to sort of continue that trend. And I think it's important that, to highlight that creative industry sort of provides much more than just that pure economic value. It provides that sort of vibrancy and opportunity for sort of innovation as well. And I know that there's a creative industries plan, which is sort of quite early in development, but I think that's part of that is being, commissioned to really understand the sort of opportunities and the strengths that Plymouth has around this sector. And I believe that will be coming to a scrutiny as well later in the year. So I'm sure that will explore more of the sector. Yeah, that was everything for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Toby. David, Leader, welcome. Did you want to add anything to that?
Only one of the things that would be useful is areas like you would like us to focus on in future updates, because I mean we have this capability to give us that intelligence, and any feedback you'd like of areas for 6 months' time would be useful.
That's great, thank you. Councillor Rainsford.
Thank you. the startup survival rates are really encouraging. Are there particular reasons why we are doing better than the wider Southwest and the UK?
I think it's certainly, there's multiple. We haven't, we're only sort of able to pick up a certain amount through the data and the sort of publicly available evidence. I mean, certainly there's lots of positions in terms of Plymouth around, the affordability for starting up businesses here, the sort of wider business community that will play a significant role. I'm not sure that there's a sort of one, particular thing that we can identify. I think it's definitely a combination.
Also, you look at the 5-year survival rates, and we have now had a long-term business support program around startup, and there's quite a lot of evidence that shows that businesses that are well networked, that take information, advice and guidance at the outset are more likely to survive long term. Better quality business planning, better quality financial management, more likely to survive. So it's pointing to the fact that it's not a linear line. It's not one thing, but there are a series of things that we've been doing. It's actually reassuring because we've been doing something right, and but you're showing that you've been doing something right for a while, because it's not something that you can just turn on and off.
Yeah.
Councillor McLeay.
Thank you, Chair. I also want to pick up on business survival for those startups. I think it is incredibly encouraging. I was curious as to whether we had sector information for those new businesses, just see if we're diversifying current sectors or retaining kind of more of the same.
It'd be great if we did. In fact, from the publicly available sources, we don't. I mean, building on what Amanda was saying, I think there's something in us understanding when we reach the end of the business support programs that we're currently running, funded through SPF, there's something that we can do in understanding, what sectors that's been supporting, and that will definitely be part of the picture. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the full number we can't, but I think that will go some way to answer the question.
This is where I suspect, which isn't a very good thing to start, in an economic evidence-based approach, because we do make our decisions on evidence-based, but we have built much stronger relationships with the HE institutions and also some of the spin-out businesses. So particularly if you look at what's happening in the creative industry sector, working with the University College, I can't get my words out, the Arts University in Plymouth, we've had some very positive narratives that have come back from them. So I think there is something about, they're not unrelated, the fact that we've got a creative industries sector that's growing and our startup rates are going up.
Thank you. Councillor Sproston.
Yeah, thank you. It kind of was touched upon by Councillor McLeay to a degree, but I was just interested in looking at the kind of stats in the breakdown of kind of sole traders and SMEs. Do we have the kind of figures which show this kind of business growth in that sense?
Yeah, there's some sources we can explore through self-employed. I think they use a self-employed versus an employee sort of definition. So there's something in that which we could look to explore. Certainly, for a sort of future update. I think that the sort of landscape of the data has been changing quite a lot in recent years in terms of what is and isn't available. So it's something definitely I could sort of take away and have a look at for a future update. Yeah.
Councillor Holloway.
Thank you for the report. My question is just asking a bit more on the part-time workers. I know you said it's a relative success story, the original starting point, but I just want to probe a bit more deeply on that. To what extent do you think this figure includes part-time workers with multiple part-time roles and therefore have stagnant job growth on full-time hours? And also, part-time work is characteristically taken up by people with caring responsibilities, women in particular. Do you think these figures tell another story about stagnant growth for particular groups that have to work part-time in the city? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly an interesting one. It's a great question of that data, because I think there's certainly there's something to multiple part-time jobs, because you know, the data presented is purely a sort of jobs figure, so it doesn't consider an individual with multiple part-time jobs, and certainly that's part of the picture. I mean, what we know from the data is that particularly the part-time workforce that are not resident in the city, their earnings were actually above the national average, and are generally above the national average. You know, so that whether that's sort of people coming in for, you know, freelance or contract-based work for a period of time and then leaving will be counted as that group. And it's definitely interesting in terms of the flexible working, because those part-time conditions do. I mean, I think certainly the part-time thing is picked up a lot around the type of work that probably happens at the dockyard and hospitals in terms of their sort of shift-based patterns. There are some limits with the data, but again, it will be something interesting to explore more around the part-time piece, certainly.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Toby. Really interesting. The report is for noting. There's no vote on that. Thank you very much for that. Very helpful insight. We look forward to that every 6 months, you say. Brilliant. Thank you. Agenda item 7, done. Agenda item 8, Plymouth City Centre company bid. Leader, I believe you're going to introduce this. Welcome.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. So here we are again, actually. Delighted to have the opportunity to explain why our city centre business improvement district really matters. And it's great that we got Patrick here, and the chair is here, and the city centre manager is here. It's all very good. It's a good team. I've been a bit of a fan of business improvement districts since the Blair government, Chair, when John Prescott first announced them, based on an American model actually, but we were early adopters here in Plymouth. And the city centre company has been leading the way, and one of the few in the country to not just to have renewed itself once, not just twice, not just 3 times, but here we are, and it's a remarkable track record. David, of course, in the early days was a city centre manager. And look where he ended up. I don't know whether that means it's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's probably a good thing. But he brought David to us. You know, we were early adopters, as I say. We were the second in the UK to do it, Chair. So, you know, I'm always been proud of that. So here we are again, going for number 5. 20 years on, fantastic. So let me be absolutely clear where I am from my exalted position of the leader's office, is to say that we are enthusiasts for business improvement districts. We're enthusiasts for the city centre company, and we're enthusiasts for a vibrant city centre. There's a reason why we've invested in things like the box, which you're going to hear about in a little while. You know, I've always seen that as a city centre investment to help drive footfall. A lot of the improvements that we make are all about that. I'm old enough to remember when I used to sit at the General Purposes and Land Subcommittee, and we had the agony of deciding whether to allow a non-retail business to come into the city centre for the first time, breaking the post-war policy. I think we had a pub or something, or Yates's Wine Lodge or something like that, right? And it was like an epically long meeting of the council to decide to do that. But we made, you know, obviously the diversification of the city centre continues to be important, and a clear and present opportunity. So I'm excited about the opportunity to continue to drive that kind of diversity into the city. We've done quite well. I mean, considering I know, you know, the Evening Herald and the Plymouth Live thrive on how can I get somebody to complain about the city centre today? Seems to be the job that they have first thing in the morning, is to, you know, no matter how optimistically they get up in the morning, their job by lunchtime is to be miserable as sin about the prospects of the city centre and to try and convince as many people as possible that the future is not bright. But actually the city centre's future is bright. We have a remarkable range of businesses, a lot locally owned and managed and run, and increasingly our recovery from the awful time of COVID has been quite remarkable, actually. And I guess these gents will be in a better position than me to tell you about it. But I just want to continue to say, you know, the council isn't just talking about it, it's leading and it's keen to put its money where its mouth is, right? So, you know, another one that I think we should continue to celebrate is the barcode, you know. Again, you know, Harold leading a campaign to bring back the bus station. You know, why? The reason we got rid of the bus station, it didn't have very much going for it, did it? It had vagrancy, smelly toilets, it wasn't clean, and it was a very unwelcoming place. You would swear, if you read the local newspaper, that actually it was the finest things, like the hanging gardens of Babylon in that. And of course it wasn't. What we've got instead is the third largest IMAX cinema in the country. We've got a load of brilliant retail and leisure businesses in there, and it's driving footfall like nothing else into the night time and delivering a load of jobs for local people. It's a brilliant thing. And again, it's in the city centre, working with investment partners and bringing real solid cash into the town, into the city. We've talked a little bit about James Mackenzie Blackman a moment ago, but you've got to remember the continued support of the Theatre Royal. We've got The Devil Wears Prada now. I mean, blimey, you know, international shows in the city centre, again, bringing visitors in from far and wide and doing its bit for the nighttime economy, but also for the daytime economy. We also need to mention that the health hub that is being delivered down in Colin Campbell Court, again driving footfall, providing facilities for where people are. That's going to bring in 90,000 people probably to that facility, right? Some of those will end up being shoppers or will participate in the leisure facilities or something. So it's all good. The university continue to talk about, I'm a big fan of what the university does. Driving diversity, driving food businesses, driving ancillary and support services, again, in the heart of the city centre. I mean, a lot of university campuses are out of town and remote and they never mix. But ours sits right proudly in the city centre and drives a lot of our business. You know, we just had the university invest in our project at Brunel Plaza. You know, the dentistry school there, the medical school there, converting the old building. Remember, the only building that Dr. Beecham actually opened into City House has actually been converted to a £40 million investment, right again, in the city centre. It's fantastic. The next door to this building, the Civic Centre being repurposed, £18.5 million project, blue-green skills, which will also, you know, not as well as supporting a lot of our ambitions economically, again, will drive footfall and excitement into the heart of the city centre. I'm very excited about that. Over the road, we've got the Guildhall, you know, home to flea markets, and also the first place that Emerson, Lake and Palmer played in 1970. I don't know if none of you are old enough to remember Emerson, Lake and Palmer, but the point is, it was a music and entertainment venue of some note back in the day. And we've been investing in decent sound equipment and facilities like that to make that, again, reawaken that as a new music and entertainment venue, which is fantastic. Again, in the heart of the city centre. Also, you'll know that we've got one or two ideas for public realm improvements around the city, some about to be finished, some about to start, some being contemplated. And again, public realm is something that's really important to potential investors. We've been here before and talked about it. The market, you remember we invested, I think it's about 5 million quid or something in refurbishing the market, Pannier Market, with its, listed roof. A really remarkable building in the heart of our city, which perhaps for too long got taken for granted. I mean, it went through a phase, where again, we used to insist that the food business, food retail in there was over 50% of it, and we're down to very few greengrocers and butchers and all of that in there now. But what has come alive in there is the cooked food offer. And there was a late opening event this week, which went really well, which had now been repeated. And that's great because, it's sort of like a world food emporium down there. If you haven't been, it's just incredible. I mean, you seem to get anything from any part of the world in there now. It's fantastic. And according to TripAdvisor, 4 of Plymouth's best restaurants are in the market now, which is amazing. And you can't knock TripAdvisor for their knowledge of the food offer. We have also been party to drawing in grant from Heritage Lottery and the Heritage Action Zone, which has spruced up a lot of buildings in the city centre. Obviously, the Civic Square just outside here being that. The cleaning up of a lot of buildings in the Marder Way, you'll have seen, looking sparkling again for the first time in quite some time. And also, of course, we've been party to the conversion of Derry's from a derelict department store into accommodation and retail offer. And also British owned stores, bringing in, of course, the legend that is German doner kebab. And also the Woolworths building, which now, of course, is one of our hotels above it. Fantastic stuff. So lots done, lots to do. The project that we've got lined up with Homes England is going to be transformational. If you think about what we're trying to do here, we're trying to develop a village in the city centre. Nothing short of astounding by wanting to do that. 5,500 homes to be provided in and around the city centre area, which will be remarkable and a real boost for retail and other uses that want to come into the city centre. We moved a lot of people out many years ago because we had to, and it's time they came home, as it were. And I'm really proud of the partnership we've got going now with Homes England. It will and does survive a change of government. We are in a very exclusive club of councils that the Homes England are investing in really serious terms. And all of that will deliver an enormous bonus for the city centre. And we'll see some of that during this next plan period and this next bid period, Chair. So they're not standing still. The plan talks about wanting to fleece visitors to a greater extent than we currently do. I'm all in favour of that. I mean, talking about 30% increase in spend, which is, is a lot and ambitious, but deliverable, I think. And also through our work with Destination Plymouth and Visit Plymouth to increase the number of visitors by 20%. Again, a target which sounds unachievable, but we've done it before. And with the right combination and the right offer, I'm very confident we'll be doing it again. So proud to be here today to lend my support to Steve and Nigel, who don't need any help from me because they are brilliant advocates for the city centre anyway. But if I've left any space for them to talk, please, gentlemen, take it away.
Thank you, Chair. I always seem to follow you, and I don't think I can live up to your capabilities. So thank you, Tudor. Councillors, the partnership between Plymouth City Centre Company and Plymouth City Council is enduring. Formed 20 years ago under, I think, Tudor's leadership, the City Centre Company, with its independent but close working relationship with the City Council, has served the city well under a number of subsequent administrations. The City Centre Company represents over 500 businesses, and Steve will shortly provide the detail, but not only does it provide a secure, safe and clean city centre, it works to ensure the ongoing viability of both the individual businesses and the city centre as a whole. The city centre represents the lifeblood of this city. Not only do our members employ thousands, it is the place where residents shop, work and spend their leisure time. Increasingly, in time, it will be the place where more and more people will live. A successful city centre is a sign of confidence and a sign of a successful city. Yet our city centre, like many others, has its challenges. And as Tudor outlined, we now have to grasp the mettle. The City Council are to be congratulated and have our sincere thanks for their ongoing commitment to the city centre. And we as the City Centre Company remain steadfast in our commitment to be the trusted partner, the glue, if you like, which combines all parties together as we work to ensure that our city centre prospers in the years ahead, despite the most formidable of challenges. So we ask, and we look forward to your ongoing support. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks everybody. Thanks, Leader, for that support and the ringing endorsement for the work that we've been doing. The report that you've got in front of you today is very detailed, so I don't really plan to go through absolutely everything, but perhaps just give you a few highlights and set things in a bit of context. So I think we are, as you all are, I hope, and working with our partners, optimistic about the future of the city centre. As Councillor Evans said, it's you go to some cities in this country, we are in a far better place, and things definitely on the up. I mean, anybody who follows me on social media will know that I'm posting regularly about Plymouth is on the up. Things are progressing very well, but we've got plenty of challenges. So I think the main point of our previous business plan and the next business plan is it has to reflect the changing nature of the high street. So we all know that our retail footprint in Plymouth city centre is too big. We will never fill all of those empty units that we've got with what we would call traditional retail again. And you can all see that as you walk around the city centre. As Councillor Evans mentioned, the new businesses that are coming up in the market, a lot of food and drink businesses opening. And we've had lots of new openings recently, all of which have been widely publicised in the press and is great to see. Drake Circus is now almost full. Very few empty units within Drake Circus. And the same story for the Barcode. You know, that's filling up really nicely now. Not only have we got that fantastic multi-screen cinema and giant IMAX screen, but we've also got family restaurants and quite a few new style leisure businesses. And of course, that's all on the back of the previous investment that you alluded to, such as the box and the Barcode and other great assets for the city centre, which we forget about sometimes, like the Theatre Royal, and our great independent retail offer. And I think it's that investment and the investment that is to come, which is our great strength. And you can see that happening now. It's only today walking Upper Armada Way. There's another new restaurant coming on the corner of Armada Way where Edinburgh Woolen Mill used to be. A new Korean style restaurant there, proper sit down restaurant, which hopefully will have outdoor seating. And that's what will be reflected in the next business plan, our ambition to deliver a different kind of city centre, a vibrant city centre that is alive all through the year, and most importantly by day and by night. So I know the evening economy is something that we're working on very closely, both with the council and Plymouth Culture and other partners. And we need that diversification to make the city centre succeed. We were held up a little bit with COVID, that delayed us all, but it's now coming on in leaps and bounds. So anybody that's walked around recently, New George Street, Old Town Street, those empty units are beginning to fill up. Some of them with really good quality independent businesses, local Plymouth business people investing money because they can see what's coming. So I think the important thing for me is that just to emphasise the strength of those partnerships, as I say, working with the council, Destination Plymouth, Visit Plymouth, Plymouth Waterfront Partnership, and more recently with Plymouth Culture, to give people more reasons to visit the city centre. That's going to be our strength. It won't just be about shopping anymore. The retail offer is very important, but it will be about creating an experience for visitors and residents, boosting the visitor economy, but also increasing the local spend. And that will be about changing perceptions. And I think we are making huge inroads into that, thanks to the work that we do constantly, as I say, with those partners. So the vision, or the mission, if you like, is laid out in the report. We are in a period of consultation at the moment, both with stakeholders and businesses, so there is flexibility within that for sort of changes and additions and feedback. So I'll be very grateful for any your questions and any feedback that you may have. There's plenty of time to shape the final business plan, but our main thrust will be to position the city centre as the major retail, visitor and leisure destination on the southwest peninsula, and a great place to live, work and study. And I think it's important to pick up on that bit about living. City living is absolutely vital, so I'm delighted to hear that the relationship with Homes England is progressing. We haven't got many people actually living in our core city centre. We're very unusual for that. So between 4,000 and 5,000 homes in the city centre will really benefit our businesses. And we have to forget that from my point of view, our main job is to look after the interests of our businesses, to welcome them, to nurture them, and to encourage them to thrive. So I think the only other things to mention really is I think we've got a huge opportunity now with the improvements in the public spaces to change the experience for people coming into the city centre. Obviously, it's a bit of a building site, or has been a bit of a building site over the last couple of years. It's beginning to start to look really good. And that will enable that inward investment then to come in, and we can find new uses for the buildings. So I think the new business plan will be bold, it will be ambitious. It reflects and aligns, I think, with the ambitions of the council. And I think I can say much, much more, but we want to do much, much more. I think that's the thing. So in terms of events, you will all know about our flagship events, Flavourfest. And Flavourfest was massive this year. Anybody who had the opportunity to see it, we think we probably got about 100,000 people into the city centre on the only 3 consecutive days that the sun has shined this year. So we were very lucky. But we changed it up this year. We used that space on the Civic Square. We created an entertainment zone. We opened up into the evening, and that's what we want to do. So we get those new spaces in Armada Way, New George Street and Old Town Street. We have a really good West End Carnival coming up quite soon. All our events have grown this year. I think the future for the next 5 years is very bright, and we look forward to your support. So thank you very much, and happy to try to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. David, Patrick, did you want to add at this stage?
All I would say is that this is Scrutiny's opportunity to feed into the business plan. So the process from here, the local authority has a very specific role in the business plan. It's a statutory partnership between the local authority and the business community. We have a power of veto that we choose not to exercise. So obviously that will go to Cabinet, setting out our match funding. So the really important thing is this is Scrutiny's opportunity to give Steve some feedback of any themes that you would like in the next 5-year business plan. So that's probably the key thing we need today.
That's great. Well, while the list is being compiled, in your introduction, Tudor, you conjured up two very different memories of a young David Draffin back in the day when you were based next door, and the bus station, both giving off different experiences of our city centre. Those two memories are quite vivid. Thank you. Councillor Rainsford.
Thank you, Chair. It was actually really encouraging to hear such an optimistic and visionary view about what our city centre can offer, both in terms of retail as well as cultural. And of course, partly started by the late Roland Lewinsky's decision to bring the university into town. So, you know, all very encouraging. Looking at your business plan, which, you know, hits an awful lot of the right buttons, I have to say. I've got one question, which is there's a line in there that says to improve connectivity between the waterfront and city centre. Can I ask how you envisage doing that? Do you already have a thought about how you do that? Because there are bits West Hoe, you've got Royal William Yard, you've got Mill Bay. How do we do that?
Yes, thank you, Alison. Yeah, it's a whole mix of things, really. And as I say, we have been a bit held up on some of the development plans. It isn't simply the bid's job to do that, of course. But there are some investments on the way which will help, such as the homes plan for the Mill Bay Boulevard. So that joint project with Plymouth Community Homes, which I mean, Patrick or David might know more about this than me, but I think it's about 155 homes due to go in there along Bath Street. That will naturally improve the connectivity towards the West End, encouraging people to travel from the waterfront into the city centre via that route. And also developments like the Moxie Hotel have also helped with that. So people are moving around more. And then I think, but mostly it's about the partnership working. So it's about the city centre company working very closely with the Plymouth Waterfront Partnership on working together to market our events. So, you know, for instance, so for Flavourfest is a good example, you know, 100,000 visitors, they don't all stay on the piazza, they move around. We encourage them to move around. And John does the same for me in terms of, you know, when it's Pirates Weekend and that kind of thing. And Sail GP was another good example as well. You know, the whole city got behind Sail GP, even though most of the activity was on the waterfront. So it's a long-term job. We won't do it overnight, but it's those sorts of things, yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Noble.
It's good to hear about the changes, and I think there's that residents when you speak to them, they've got their expectations of the city centre have changed from, you know, just over the canvassing from when I first started canvassing 4 or 5 years before the pandemic to now. But obviously there's quite a lot of change coming with things like the Armada Way project, the disruption. We've seen it's taken a while to get New George Street. They found it's very interesting what they've found, but it's obviously disruption for your businesses. So how does your plan take this into account? How are you going to help your businesses overcome some of these, you know, changes that are going to happen physically in the area?
I suppose, well, we're really the sort of one-stop shop for those businesses. So I think we're the voice on the end of the phone, if you like. So, and that's particularly relevant for the changes that you refer to, especially for new and start-up businesses. So I was quite encouraged by the very first presentation that we had today. And it's those kinds of things. So when these businesses open in Old Town Street, New George Street, they are generally put in touch with us, and we are there then to provide them with a helping hand on all sorts of issues, from planning, signage, who to talk to at the council, and sometimes direct grant support. So one of the biggest successes we've had over the last 5 years with small businesses is a shop improvement grant scheme, which does depend on whether we can get the funding for it. But, we've had a number of iterations of that scheme. And businesses are incredibly grateful because they haven't got much cash up front. But through us, we can enable them to make their businesses more visible. And then the other changes that we have to be really aware of course, the social media is now much more important. It used to be just Twitter and Facebook, and now it's TikTok and Reels. So they're all getting to grips with that, and we provide mentoring and courses to help with that. And also, which might not be mentioned very much in there, but one of the things that we're looking at, and I haven't got a simple answer to it, but we do need to look at it and consider it, is the Deliveroo Just Eat kind of culture that we've now got, and the way people's shopping habits are changing. So it's a lot of our city centre businesses, quite a high percentage of their business is through deliveries. How do we deal with that and those kinds of things? So I haven't got all the answers, but we are working with organisations like the Chamber of Commerce, like the Council, like Invest in Plymouth to help them through that process. And I think if the bid wasn't there doing that, it would be much more challenging for them because they wouldn't have one organisation that they can go to.
Thank you. Councillor Holloway.
Thank you. When we have these moments of new 5-year plans, they're a really important moment, not just to be really positive about the future and who we can be as a city, which I think you've laid out really, really well. It's also a moment to look back at the previous 5 years. Several of your targets for the plan in the 5-year period ahead are kind of evolutions of what was in the previous plan. And I just sort of wanted to ask our speakers, if you had to kind of give yourselves a mark out of 10 for how you performed against the last plan, what would you say? And what lessons do you think you learnt from that plan that you're applying to the next plan? Thank you.
Yeah, good question. No, well, it's not really great to mark our own homework, is it? So maybe I should leave the figure to other people. I think if we reflect back on the previous 5 years, it's been really challenging because we had COVID in the middle of it. We had a cost of living crisis, and it's been really, really tough for our businesses. So I suppose we're measured, on the support we provide to the businesses and how many of those businesses succeed or fail. One of the really important things that I haven't mentioned actually and should have done, sorry, it's quite a big omission on my part, is our park officers and the Plymouth Against Retail Crime. That has been a major success over the last 5 years, and some of the innovation that we have brought forward with partners such as the police and community connections at the council. So that DISCAP, which the businesses use to deal with issues like antisocial behaviour and shoplifting, both of which we've seen a massive rise in. So the rise in those incidents has been a negative, but the way we've been able to deal with it has been a positive, and I think the businesses are extremely grateful for that. I think given all the challenges that we've had, I think I hope people agree, we've performed pretty well, so maybe, but not right at the top end because it's been so difficult, so challenging. And I think the area where we probably haven't performed quite as well as we would have liked is in terms of the look and feel of the city centre. And a lot of that is down to money, and a lot of that is down to the issues we just talked about, and a lot of it is down to the fact that we're trying to improve things. And when you're trying to improve things, you have to knock a few things down to start with. So obviously New George Street and Old Town Street has been much more problematic than any of us thought it would be. It's taken longer to deliver than we would have liked, and we've had the delays on Armada Way as well. So there's been a lot for our businesses to contend with, but the council and the government absolutely brilliant through COVID. We helped with that process in getting the grants out to businesses, and we really haven't had many business failures since the big ones of when our groups like Arcadia went bust, and we lost lots of big chains. But since then, I think we've outperformed a lot of city centres. We've had far more openings in the last 2 years than we've had closures. So I'm pretty confident about the next 5 years.
Sorry, Dave. Do you want to? Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, an interesting question. Been a pretty torrid time, I would say, all round. But I think reputationally, I think our members, I think, support us probably even more. I think they trust us even more because I think we've sought to be dignified, a dignified supporter of the difficulties that the local authority have had to confront in recent times. And I think we've been there for the local authority as well. So I think to our members, hopefully to the local authority, and of course, you may all have a different view of it, of course, I think things have moved on quite nicely. So I would hope that we would have our continued member support going forward. And I think a lot of the trust, I have to say, is down to this man to my right-hand side, who is, I think, is always there for our members, often going out and seeing them, having rallies with them. And I think he's a trustworthy individual. I think we're so lucky to have him.
Thank you, Nigel. Steve, would you mind just dropping off your mic there, please? Thank you. David, did you want to come in?
Yeah, if I could. So I sort of cast my mind back to 2019 and kind of where we were, and all local authorities and these sort of partnerships, we have a tendency not to remember what we've done. I think that's perhaps part of your question. And I'm going to give you 5 examples of things that had we not grafted and had we not done, they wouldn't exist. And we'd be in a really, really different place had we not done those things. And I think that's important. So, you know, we have secured a 25 million investment from NHS England in Colin Campbell Core. That was hard fought over a long period of time. And that's part of changing the mix. So, you know, you've got city centres that were built for a different world, you know, with different shopping habits. So everyone's trying to figure out what those change of use are. Well, we won that. And not only did we win it, we put it in town, because we could have put it somewhere else. Secondly, on Bretton's side, that cinema was going to go in Plymouth somewhere, and we chose to put it in the city centre. And when it was actually during, I remember vividly, Brexit happened and the construction market had a wobble. We had, the day after, the chief executive of British Land was in Tracy and Tudor's office saying, are we going to do this? And there was an ask of us and ask of them. We did it. Again, really, really hard fought and really brave to do that. We made an investment on the basis of getting £800,000 rates every year. That was hard. That wouldn't have happened but for fighting. We were the only leisure scheme that year in the UK to be delivered outside, and then since then outside of London. You know, I defy any of you to identify another leisure scheme since then, because they're all going bust because they're really difficult in the cost. We did that. We put a museum in the heart of a city centre that could have gone anywhere. I mean, there were original plans for the box were in a variety of different locations, notwithstanding we're all in the yard and schools and everywhere. We put it in town, and that's brought 820,000 visitors so far into town. We did that. The university's campus growth, and you're very right about Roland Levinsky and his decision making around the campus, is a massive driver. But again, that campus only happened at the station because we did the pre-work, we did the land assembly, we did the building, we worked with GWR, we did that. And then the fact that Reef, Homes England, identified us as a priority place, and therefore we have an investment partnership that's growing. We did that, and that's why we were able to take the Civic onto our books. So I suppose I just reflect and answer your question. Imagine if we didn't have a health hub being built, we didn't have the barcode, so Bretton's side was still as it is, we didn't have a museum in the city centre, we didn't have the university expanding in the city centre, and we didn't have an ambition for 5,000 homes, then I think your answer to your question would be really, really different. So I'm pretty proud of what we have all done, and it's been a long-term gig. I think that would be my answer.
Councillor Freeman.
I have a number of questions, if that is okay.
Well, let's see how you get on.
Well, we are here to scrutinise, so if you don't mind. I'm hoping that as one gets answered, it'll also answer the next, because they kind of like flow into each other. So just to start off on page 34 of the document, and us being asked to approve the following recommendations. Point 3. Take my glasses off. I would just like being a newbie, I would just like some clarification and a bit better explanation of how this section is worded, please. Authorising the chief executive as ballot holder to instruct a ballot holder to undertake a ballot of appropriate businesses within the city centre company business improvement district area.
I can answer that really simply. It's a statutory requirement. So the beauty of business improvement district, they have to have a vote, and it is a requirement for the chief executive to oversee and instruct that. So what effectively is happening by that recommendation is some third party assurance for the levy payers that the ballot will be run properly.
Right, but authorise the chief executive as ballot holder to instruct a ballot holder. So who is a ballot holder?
So effectively, the chief executive has to commission and oversee the ballot. You'll see in the next recommendation that I am delegated to exercise the votes of the council.
Right, so the next section is delegate to the service director the right to vote on behalf of the city council.
Yeah, so there's separate roles. The role of the chief executive is to oversee the process of the ballot, and the council as a levy payer, so a rates payer, has the right to vote. It has more than one vote, and the process of us deciding how to vote will go through the cabinet, and ultimately I will be instructed, but it will be me. So there's a separation of roles between the chief executive, who has a probity and governance role, and me, who is instructed on behalf of the local authority to vote in the ballot.
Can I just step in there, Councillor Freeman? So I'm delighted you're getting involved. In terms of the governance of that, you can trust that that's accurate. That's the normal process it follows. Happy to arrange a briefing for you or any other members in terms of that outside of this meeting. But the list is long. So if we can get to your question about not the ballot, the process, the report itself, because there are other speakers who wish to come in. Thank you.
No, that's absolutely fine, and I appreciate that, Councillor Darcy. Thank you. It was just if we as councillors can't understand that when these papers are also available to the general public, how do we expect them to understand that as well? And of course we are here to scrutinise, so as I said, but absolutely. So moving on, so going on to page 39, when we start talking about costs to businesses. So we start talking about a majority of businesses voting, about a majority of businesses determining the outcome of the ballot. And I know further in the document it says about 50% will determine the outcome of the ballot. So obviously I'm hoping that more than it'll be a higher, but the outcome will actually be higher than that. So my concern is about costs for smaller businesses. I know that it has said in the document that if the businesses have a smaller, I haven't got my reading glasses, if businesses have a smaller rateable value of a threshold of below, I think it was £6,000 or something, they will be exempt and therefore they won't be balloted. Yeah. So if during the process of a year or two further down the line their rateable value increases and goes above that threshold, will they then get sucked into paying that levy?
Not during the bid. That depends on how we write the bid rules. This is all getting very technical. So there is legislation that governs all of this. So if it was during the bid term, so during the 5 years of the business plan, then no. But then later on, you know, when the new bid comes through, then potentially.
So just to clarify, no, they don't. That's the
right.
Answer.
That's
just
lovely.
In terms of technical thing,
and also,
it's at the point of time we make that decision for 5 years. That's it. Yeah. So that's your question answered.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
But importantly, they are not. They're exempt from paying the bid levy. They are not excluded from the benefits of the bid
just
and
the actual
everything
payment
we provide.
itself.
Yeah.
That is lovely. That is great. So that actually answers a couple of my questions.
Great, Councillor Freeman. I'm going to ask you. Do you have more questions?
No, I will leave it at that.
Are you sure? Okay, yes. I'm going to invite others in, but I will bring you in again if you've got more questions, just so everybody gets a chance to raise their questions. All right?
No. Thank you.
Councillor Ricketts.
Thank you for attendance. Thank you for, it's good to have a panel that exactly in position to answer these questions. Thank you, Tudor, for giving that assessment of that kind of media coverage we've been having of the city centre. And what David said is absolutely correct. There's those 5 things on their own magnificent. We must acknowledge, though, that the general public are disappointed with the city centre as it stands. That middle bit, Armada Way, we have to acknowledge it. That's my advice. That would be something that I would say you need to look into on this bid, and you need to recognise it. It's not mentioned in here. Now that needs to be addressed. The people need to know that the Armada Way scheme and that situation is being addressed and looked at. The only reference to it that I could find was New Look City Centre on page 38. That needs to be a central item, because all the good work we're doing around it is getting missed, because the middle bit, the middle of the football pitch, if you like, is the thing that people see and feel and have a really strong view of, and they feel disappointed in our city centre. That is, I think we all know that. We've all been on the doors. That needs to be addressed. We haven't even got, and I understand the situation with the city centre company and the council with the partnership, we haven't even got a start date for it. So I don't know why we...
So, Councillor Ricketts, sorry, as I've just with Councillor Freeman, I'm keen that we get many speakers in. So I'm kind of keen to urge you to your question. I know Councillor Noble raised a similar question and there was a response provided in terms of a partnership working. But if you could get to your question...
The question is, yeah, we are here to scrutinise.
Absolutely. Well, then ask your question.
Well, the question is, and what I'm personally saying in my role is that the Armada Way should be more represented in this plan. Will it be? When's the start date? And, you know, that's the 2 key questions. Will it be, you know, in there more, and when will we have a start date?
Well, neither of those are really questions for the bid, because the bid won't be doing the project. The City Council will be doing the project. So you'd probably be better off having a scrutiny session on Armada Way, another one, rather than make it part of this business improvement district offer. The point is we haven't got a start date yet, because we're still dealing with the fallout of the rising costs of the project. So the council is currently considering options about delivery of Armada Way. We can't let that get in the way and inhibit the business improvement district bid, because, as I said, the city centre company is not responsible for Armada Way. The city council is, and we'll make sure that we make a start as soon as it's practical and financially possible. But if I could just, since you've asked about it, we inherited a complete mess, to be honest with you, and we are just trying to put it right. We've also been inhibited as a council, as you know, by legal action, which we've now nearly towards the end of. Something that didn't get publicised during the election campaign was that the campaigners' attempts to have the decision in favour of the council overturned failed, so their appeal failed. So it means now we can proceed with a little bit less caution, but more speed towards getting a project together. But I think, again, people outside the city believe that Armada Way is the only thing that goes on in the city centre. And those of us that live here know that that isn't the case. And we've just given a big long list of things that support the city centre. Again, city centre is not just Armada Way. It's the box, it's the National Marine Park, it's the university, it's the railway station, it's all these other things as well. So I would urge the panel not to follow Councillor Ricketts' invitation to make the problem of Armada Way a problem for the city centre company. The city centre company has enough problems to deal with on a day-to-day basis without being invited into that particular issue.
I have got Councillor Bannerman. I'll add you to the list, Councillor Ricketts. Well, he's given a response in terms of the start date. We don't have one, and he's already advised that it's not just about Armada Way, it's about the bid. So I'm not sure there is a follow-up.
We don't know what it is.
Well, be very brief.
We've got to keep the flow of things here.
Well, we have lots of speakers, Councillor Ricketts, so just ask the question. Ask the question.
We've got plenty of time. There's only 3 agenda items on the meeting
Councillor
today.
Ricketts, do you want to ask the question or
Yes,
not?
I do.
Go ahead.
I respect your point, and this landed at your door as you took over the council. I recognise that, and we all recognise that. But there's obviously the public perception. There is a synergy between what the council are doing and the city centre company, and Steve's alluded to that because he does a lot of social media on the issue. So all I'm saying is we need to be looking at the communication on this, because the public see a lot of airtime and a lot of time on social media talking about that
So what's the question, please, Councillor Ricketts?
That if we want to move forward successfully, we need to have a proper communication scheme in place.
I'm quite content to move on, Leader. Thank you. Councillor Bannerman, please.
So you talk a lot about diversifying and making sure the city centre is inclusive, and I feel that we're working towards that. I'm just looking at your equality impact assessment and the disability domain, and apologies if I'm not meant to scrutinise this element, but I was looking at this in terms of, it appears that you look at disabilities as just kind of lift access and stuff like that. So I was wondering whether there was any adverse impacts for people with mental health conditions or neurodiversities, and whether there was any adverse impact on that kind of clientele.
Yeah, it's one that we're sort of continually working on. I think the equality impact assessment isn't just for the bid, it's the partnerships that we've got with everybody, really. So it's something that we're continually working on. So we do liaise regularly with PADAN. So I've had conversations with Councillor Aspinall about that. So it's not just about lifts, but obviously we encourage businesses to do what they can. But it also is things like our events. So for instance, so we do listen to feedback in terms of wheelchair access and all those kinds of things. So you'll notice, for instance, at the Christmas light switch on, we have special access for wheelchair users. And then for the first time this year, we're going to have what do they call them? People who sign for the deaf on stage, and that was we responded to feedback from people with deaf children who said, well, they would like to enjoy it as well. So we work quite closely with the council on that, but happy to listen to any sort of further feedback or ideas. And it's also, we work closely with Community Connections on things like, so the violence against women, campaign against violence against women, with the help points and things like that in the city centre as well. So you're right, we do want to be inclusive. We want the city centre to be welcoming for all communities and all people, but we're not actually solely in charge of making that happen. Does that make sense? Yeah, but we will address it. Yeah, we will be there.
Thank you. Councillor Sproston.
Thank you. I just want to start by saying thank you and well done. Given the size of our city and the amount of work that's going on, I find it quite incredible, especially given my last job, which was going round the southwest and seeing a lot of cities. I think ours is in particularly good shape, given all the economic crisis and everything we've had. What I would like to quickly ask about is, we've talked a bit about COVID, but there was nothing in the report. And whilst I see that as quite a positive looking forward element, I just want to ask about the footfall in regards to pre-pandemic levels. And would you consider that the city has actually made a full recovery from COVID? And if not, is there still support for some of the local businesses moving forward?
Well, in terms of footfall, so we haven't fully recovered in terms of footfall, but we're doing a lot better. We're probably one of the fastest recovering city centres in the country in terms of footfall coming back. year to date, footfall is up 20% in the city centre, as measured by the 4 cameras that we've got in the city centre. But we're still quite a long way behind where we were in 2019. I think everything that we've talked about today will help to get the graph moving back in the right direction again, particularly the stuff around the visitor economy. We all know that the cruise sector is growing in Plymouth, so we're getting more cruise ships every year, and our vision is aligned with the Visit Plymouth vision. We do think we are moving a bit more away from being simply a day visitor destination to being more of a city break destination, thanks to those cultural interventions that we've heard about. So I'm optimistic that footfall will continue to rise. We've also, as a partnership, and this is for the whole Southwest, some of you may have seen some news on this, invested in a tourism data hub. And I think that will be really useful for us, but also really useful for our businesses in terms of measuring more accurately who's coming to our city, where they're going, what they're spending their money on, and how much they're spending their money on, because that will be a lot of that data will come from debit and credit card expenditure. So that will be really useful. Yeah, so I hope that answers that point. Yeah, we're looking at it. Yeah.
Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you. Yes, firstly, I want to congratulate you as well. I think, you know, the pride of the city is a really important thing, and the items that Tudor and David have listed are clearly, you know, big reasons why we do have pride in our city now. When you look to 2010 and how people felt then to the feeling that you get now, it's quite a vast difference. I'm a former director of Visit Devon, and I have to commend Steve and Nigel on the various events that they have run over the course of multiple bids. And those are not just good in region, they're good across our country. And that really is testament to them. It's, you know, it's impressive. It really is impressive. I think the question that I had, I just wanted to make that statement, but the question I had was actually looking with the sort of introduction of residential, where in other cities, you know, that's been retained. I wondered, you know, how much consideration is going into sort of live work and the development. You know, we've just heard about incubation and things like that. Just on that front, really.
So it's really interesting if you look at other cities around the UK that they have generally the city centre where everything is. So it's where the bars are, the restaurants are, the houses are, the central business district is. I'm from Sheffield, so if you mend Sheffield city centre, notwithstanding Meadowhall, you kind of sort out the majority of your issues. Coastal cities have a different problem, which is a bit similar to a very large piece of toast and probably not quite enough butter. So we have, if you think about what we've got the Royal William Yard, and we've got the Barbican, and we've got the Mountbatten Peninsula, and then we've got the University Quarter. So as a result, in terms of livability, there are lots of places where people can choose to live, which is why our housing, and it goes back to the Abercrombie zoning as well, if you go back to post-war, when it seemed a great idea to have the education here and the housing here, and of course the mixture of uses that modern cities thrive on if you go into Europe is never really able to happen when things are planned in one big go. You either get it right or you don't. So it has been harder to create the case for a place to live in the city centre when people can live in all those different places. And that's the challenge. And that's what the conversation with Homes England is about. That's why the investment in public realm is important. That's why health facilities are important. That's why cultural uses are important, because you can't put houses into a place if it isn't a place where people want to live. And that's the journey we've been on. So, you know, you'll hear about it shortly from Jemima and Victoria, but we don't invest in culture just because we love art, and we do. But actually we invest in it because that's what makes people want to live in places. The reason we connect Mill Bay to the city centre via the boulevard is because people want access to water and open green spaces. So I think you've hit on, you know, the big challenge for the next 5 years is working on that livability. You know, if you don't have quality public realm, people aren't going to want to live in those spaces. So The reason Homes England have wanted to talk to us is because we have that full suite of ingredients that make us a place that they would want to invest alongside us for housing. And if we didn't have those things, culture and health and education, then we wouldn't be creating that place. But it takes time, you know, to invest. If you look at where, you know, some of these cities, they put too much housing in too quickly, and then they have, you know, then people say, well, you know, I want to live as a student, but where's it a place for families? So this is, I think, the next iteration of the city centre, and this is clearly not just for the bid, is about that livability in the place. So yes, LiveWorks part of it, particularly linked to, you know, I mean, how great we've got two universities in our city centre, you know, all that stuff. But everything we're doing is creating a place, and that's what we're trying to do. And if we were just focusing on the retail or just focusing on the housing, we wouldn't be creating that place. So it's a very astute question. It's absolutely what we're trying to do.
Thank you. Members, I don't wish to stymie discussion and questions, but I'm mindful we're now 20 minutes over on our agenda timetable, and I've still got questions from members. So yes to questions, please. Councillor McLeay, you're next.
Thank you. I'll try and keep this brief. I want to pick up on the other part of visitors to Plymouth, and how are we best set up to manage that 15% uplift in visitor number targets with our existing accommodation provision, and how much do we need to expand in that area to meet that ambition?
So there's a bunch of things in that. So our current approach to visitor economy is fundamentally we're a day visitor destination. So people don't have to live in the city to visit the city centre. And funnily enough, I visited, as part of visiting all the sites that I have responsibility for, I visit most of them twice a year. I was in the Tourist Information Centre recently, just watching people come from Germany, Canada, States, England, and it was really interesting how most of them aren't staying in the city. Some are using the city as a base, but most of them are just in and around. But everyone are choosing the city as their day visitor destination. So our current strategy has been to be and it was the visitor plan, the prime visitor destination for Devon and Cornwall. So that's what we've been trying to do. And the next iteration is to convert those day visitors into staying visitors. And we've been doing that. And, you know, we've, you know, Derry's is a hotel that didn't exist in the city centre. That's now there, and I think that's pretty big actually. I think it's 150 plus rooms, not 200 rooms. It's a big hotel. But you're right, the bit we're missing doesn't really link exactly to the city centre, is we still got to crack that 5-star hotel, 4-star hotel project, and that's probably unfinished business perhaps for both myself and the leader, because it's something we've put a lot of time and energy into. We know there's demand, but fundamentally there's this still problem about the value gap in Plymouth and the cost of construction, and the only people that can step into that place at the moment is local authority or central government, and you know, we haven't had the opportunity of a bid for large central government funding recently, apart from the Levelling Up Fund. So that you can guarantee that's the sort of thing that will be our list going forward. But certainly all the plans you've seen can be delivered within what we have at the moment. So anything beyond that is an opportunity to step up. But again, yes, you're right. That's unfinished business, and we will do a lot. But there'll be actually, I don't know when it's going to be. There'll be a new hotel announcement soon that I think we're in the process of making, linked to the council's land and property team. So we keep plugging away.
Thank you, Councillor Rainsford.
Thank you, Councillor Darcy. 2019, your objectives, there were 6 of them, and that have been taken forward. They've largely mirrored in your business plan this time with some additions. One of the additions is to support our business to reduce carbon impacts and helping our business to be sustainable. Obviously, energy costs must be an issue for your businesses, but also there will be an enthusiasm to reduce carbon because of climate change. How are you supporting them, and do you have other sort of strategic partners to do that?
This is a bit of a work in progress, if I'm honest. So that's not part of our main remit as the bid. So that will involve working with partners. It will involve working with the council. It will involve promoting other people's schemes rather than our own schemes, because we haven't got the funding to deliver those kinds of initiatives. So it will be more a sort of help, advice and mentoring process, certainly in the early stages. But I mean, I'm not speaking myself here really for the Waterfront Partnership, but part of one of the projects within our Sharing Prosperity Fund project that we got was to put in electric points for the ice cream vans. So we're looking at things like that all the time. We'll be working with Connect Plymouth in terms of promoting the Beryl bikes and the co-cars, all those kinds of things. And of course, we will work really closely with the Transport Department in terms of encouraging more people to cycle and walk. And some of the funding, of course, that's coming through is from Transforming Cities Fund, which is also all designed to encourage more people onto public transport and to cycle and walk. So it's a bit of a work in progress. But obviously it's something that we're very aware of and something that we need to do. But still, I mean, what I would say to all members of the panel is this is a draft business plan at this stage. That there is still, you know, if there's something that you are passionate about and that you think we haven't done and that you think we need to do more on, please let me know. So I have noted down all your points as we've gone through, and I will look at that as we start to prepare the final plan.
Just to
sorry, Anthony. Tudor,
no, go on.
Well, I was going to say that the council is also busy in this space. And in terms of things that we're looking at, include Eat Networks, for example, which got the potential to be quite transformational in the city centre, delivering low-cost energy and, more importantly, decarbonising the city centre. So these things are quite important, and they're probably beyond, because of the scale of the investment required, it's beyond the bid.
Yeah.
You know, it's actually beyond the city councils. You know, in terms of the amount of money it would take, but the point is, it's the sort of thing that we're actively talking about at the moment.
So that item on district heating networks is coming to this panel at the next panel meeting, so you can contribute to that through that route. Thanks.
Thank you. Just as an update, there are 3 speakers left, and then we won't be taking any more. I have Councillor Ricketts, please.
Thank you, Chair. In the report, it says you've listened to the business concerns. Just interested, obviously, we've talked about the good stuff, but what are the concerns? Is it the lack of festivity at the Christmas celebrations, New George Street? What are the sort of concerns that you're coming across?
It's a whole range. It's a whole range of concerns. A lot of it is around business costs, which is a lot of that is beyond our control. So a lot of the concerns is about surviving. So they feel that rents are too high, business rates are too high. That's what most of the complaints are about. A bit, as I mentioned before, about the look and feel of the city centre. I think they would like a bit more focus on street cleaning and planting and those kinds of things. But actually, you know, in recent months, there has been a mood change. I think that mood change has come from beginning to see the merits of the investment and what's to come, because we are seeing, you know, lots. I mean, Greg from Drake Circus will tell you that he's now showing people around the city, and they are beginning to take notice and think, actually, yeah, we might be interested in moving here because we can see the ambition and we can see the vision. A lot of the concerns that individual businesses have are the concerns right outside their door. So they can be a bit blinkered at times. They're concerned about exactly what's going on outside their front door rather than what's happening in the West End or in Old Town Street, depending on where they are located. Antisocial behaviour is a big issue. And again, that's not just down to the bid or just down to the council or just down to the police. It's down to all of us. It's down to society. We're not alone in Plymouth in having problems with antisocial. Some terrible problems last summer with youth antisocial behaviour, which I think we've made some really good progress on. I think those are the main ones, Steve, really.
Thank you. Councillor Freeman.
It's a very quick one, Chair, I do promise you. Just one final question I didn't manage to ask earlier on. Assuming the ballots comes out in favour, what would happen if you had businesses who approached you and said they just simply couldn't afford to pay that additional levy? What would happen with those businesses? What help is available?
Well, it's governed by legislation. So it's if we are voted in and we pass the 2 tests, then it's a mandatory payment. What I would say is if you're looking, it's a no-brainer really, to be honest. The bids all over the country, it is just a great economic model for managing a city or a town centre. And the way it works is it's based on the rateable value of the business. So the big businesses pay a lot, the small businesses don't pay very much. So I'll give you an example. The highest the highest bid levy payment in the city centre, one of the big department stores, is £14,000 a year. Most of the small businesses in the West End are paying less than £200 a year. Some of them are paying less than £100 a year. It's worth that just to have their trade waste recycling bins emptied, which we pay for. Or just to have the Christmas lights outside their shop. So we don't really get many complaints about affordability, particularly at the lower level. You know, once you meet with them face to face, and we have been around for quite a long time now. I've been in post for about nearly 7 years, and Holly, my deputy, has been in post for about 10 years. We know a lot of these business owners on first name terms, particularly down in the West End. So, and we have lots of meetings with them as well. So particularly at the sort of the lower and the higher end, we haven't really got any issues. We do get, it's an annual payment, and we do get phone calls sometimes from businesses who are struggling. And if that's the case, we are sympathetic and we can make arrangements for them to pay in instalments. We don't encourage that because it's more difficult to administer, but we don't have many complaints about paying the bid levy. We really don't.
Just to give you some context in the report, but 264 businesses will pay between £100 and £500 of the 523. So, you know, if you think, you know, take the medium, £250 a year per week, I mean, I think it is pretty de minimis, I think, for the value they're getting. And then the council's match fund, which is set out in the report, and the 49 million capital programme. So my experience is just having the advocacy and lobbying that these guys are able to be part of that street partnership. When I was doing this job 1,000 years ago, the cost of the levy was rarely the fundamental issue. It was more about wanting a voice, wanting to be part of something, wanting to feel like there was change. So that's my sense. But 50% of the businesses are paying less than £500.
Thank you. Very good question. I was going to probe on that one as the final question, so you've done my work for me. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming, Nigel, Steve in particular, Leader, and Patrick, and David, of course. Members, thank you. That was a really good discussion. The recommendation before scrutiny is that it's recommended that, one, we support the principles and overall approach of the Plymouth City Centre Company bid and its draft business plan for 25 to 2030. It is a vote. Are you voting already?
Question.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's just on the mechanics, just to conclude. When will the business plan be complete, and when will the campaign and voting start?
Well, we've got a mandate to continue until March the 31st, 2025. So we haven't confirmed an actual start date yet for the ballot, but we obviously have to go to ballot before March next year. And sorry, what was the second part of the question? The business probably by September, early October.
So Chair, this is a pre-decision scrutiny ahead of Cabinet. So obviously there's an opportunity to feedback the business plan between now and August, and in August the local authority will effectively make its decision whether it's going to veto it, which is a formal process we have to go through. So that's the timetable for the local authority.
And as you say, this is pre-scrutiny. Cabinet will obviously scrutinise any further amendments in that regard, and if they feel it needs to come back to scrutiny, that's a mechanism that Cabinet can trigger. So that's the process that's been adopted over the last 20 years or so. I'm grateful, but a good question. Members,
Chair, we could also request, if we feel necessary.
Yes, of course. Yeah, indeed we could. The mechanisms are there, so absolutely right. On that basis, I'm putting it to the panel, and the recommendation is to support the principles and overall approach of the Plymouth City Centre Company bid. That's in your papers. Can I ask you to vote by a way of show of hands in support? Okay, that's unanimous, yes? Thank you. Thank you very much for attending. Members, thank you very much. Whilst you're getting settled there, I will introduce the next item. We are now at agenda item number 9. Apologies to those who are here for agenda item number 9. We've overrun, but we've had quite a few meaty items to discuss before this agenda item. Welcome, Councillor Lang. I believe you're going to introduce the item. It's over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's not always you get to come to Scrutiny really excited to share a real success story, but this is one such occasion. And I think it's really important that we've got the opportunity to share what the box is doing with members and tell the story of the profound impact it's having on Plymouth. So this is our annual review, 23-24. As councillors, we've all made positive decisions in recent years to invest in culture in Plymouth, at a time when many councils across the country have had to cut back. But in doing so, we must continuously demonstrate the impact and the return on that investment. And this is what today is about. Plymouth set out 10 years ago on a journey to create a unique cultural institution in Plymouth. We were very ambitious. We wanted to create the best regional museum in the UK, to establish Plymouth as a national centre for contemporary art, and to integrate our totally unique archives, film, image and records. But beyond that, we set out to transform our city, with the box acting as a catalyst for learning, for skills, for regeneration, for tourism and for civic pride. Culture is often described as one of those initiatives that can get to places that other initiatives can't. And I hope that after today, you will really feel that too. So the team are going to give you a detailed overview of where we are today, but I want to highlight a few areas first. Last year, the box welcomed 272,000 visits, which is a major achievement in a city with a population of 260,000 people. That's a 10% increase on the previous year, and 3 times as many visits as the former Plymouth Museum and Art Gallery. We're developing a national and international reputation, working with some of the very best artists in the UK and beyond. Leonora Ultunes, Jonna Comfra, Rana Begum, and our own Joshua Reynolds, and some of the very best institutions in the UK too, including the Royal Academy, the Tate, the V&A, and the National Portrait Gallery. We are loved by locals, with exhibitions such as Planet Ocean attracting our schools. Our brilliant cafe is a firmly established community hub, and Totally Amazing Families programme, We have over 50 free family events coming up this year alone, and I went to the graduation of the I Wonder group, which is the 5 and under group, yesterday. And what was really lovely was one of the grandparents who's been bringing her granddaughter there for the past 4 years, and she was graduating because she's going to school. And she was telling me that when they come to the box, not to these sessions with family and friends, that her daughter, her 4-year-old daughter, is showing people around the box. It's her place, she belongs there, she knows it inside out. And I just thought that was a really wonderful thing to hear about the box. We also generate really significant match funding, and in the past 12 months we'll have generated over £2 million of earned and grant income. We're also building a growing reputation for the work we do with young people, with 78% of our schools on formal visits, 27,000 family visits, and 87,000 community participants. And it's not just us saying it. Our Google and TripAdvisor reviews are genuinely a joy to read, which can't be said for every area of the council's interactions with the public. And when we were building the box, we resisted the temptation to value engineer our ambition or to make compromises. And it is one of a special few projects in Plymouth where I can honestly say we have exceeded our expectations. But it's most exciting that we're only just getting started, and there is so much more to come. The box is owned by all of us, and if we all continue to champion it and love it as elected members, then it will continue to grow, to thrive, and surprise us. So I'm going to hand over to Kate Farmbury, who's Head of Business at the Box, and Victoria Pomry, who is the CEO, and they're going to update you in greater detail on last year's performance and give you a sense of what is coming up in the year ahead. But I wanted to share a message that David received from Sir Nick Sirota, who's Chair of the Arts Council, when we opened the box, which summarises in a nutshell what this is all about. So he said, following our National Council visit 2 years ago, I had high expectations of the box. However, the density and imagination of the displays, coupled with the transformation of St Luke's, is an astonishing achievement. In one large stride, you have lifted the museum and the gallery to national status, with facilities that will allow you to serve the people of Plymouth and the South West and make a contribution to the whole country. All that work and, David, all those visits has paid off, which I think says it all. But now I'm going to hand over to Kate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jemima, and it's a pleasure to be here with you all today. May I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So first of all, I just wanted to remind us all what we as a city have created. A quick reminder that the box opened in the middle of the global pandemic in September 2020. We expect to welcome our millionth visitor next year. We know we've already had a £13 million tourism impact on the city, and we're about to embark upon a fuller social and economic impact study so that this time next year we will be able to share even more detail of the impact that we have had. But as Jemima said, we can't stress enough the extent to which funding from the city levers really significant external funding. And in fact, last year, 56% of our budget was generated from other sources. And we earned more than 2 million of either earned or grant income in that same year. Next slide, please. We know how important it is that Plymouthians take this project to their heart. And some of these quotes will give you a really strong sense of just how locally loved the venue is. And what's lovely in reading these quotes is not just that people acknowledge what a brilliant free day out it is, what a great cafe it is, but also that it's having so much more of a meaningful impact in that, you know, people talk about their joy at having real life issues contextualised in the galleries. They talk about it being truly world class as a result. They talk about our willingness to talk about issues that matter and relate to the current world. They also just talk about how awe-inspiring it is, you know, what an exhilarating environment it is, but, you know, it is really heartwarming. I did want to share with you some of these quotes. Next slide, please. But we also now know how important it is that the box contributes to the city's national and international profile and reputation. So again, just a few quotes that have come out recently that show just what a positive impact the box is having on the overall city's reputation. From Plymouth City Centre has undergone a huge resurgence since the opening of major cultural venue, the box, to some of the biggest names in contemporary art are coming to the box. That was on ITV News. John Comfort, the artist who represented the country at the world's biggest art festival, the Venice Biennale, earlier this year, saying, for my interests, Plymouth is a big place to come to. A slick gallery and exhibition space that has attracted over 800,000 visitors. Plymouth is now the only UK place you can see a world-class art exhibition. Art enthusiasts in Plymouth are in for a treat with an international exhibition landing at the box. There are so many more of these I could share with you, but I just pulled out some of them to give you a sense of how we're not only locally loved, but we are very much becoming nationally known, and the city is becoming nationally known. Next slide, please. Of course, our dynamic and connected programme is a huge factor in this. The richness of the exhibitions we showed in just one 12-month period last year really can't be found in many other cities. And, you know, it really is incredible, and we should be so proud of the programme and the shows that we put on. Next slide, please. And because of this, our impact on people's lives is ever growing. As Jemima mentioned, we've actually, hot off the press, had more than 820,000 visits since we opened. And genuinely, the number of visits we're getting is increasing year on year. And nearly 60% of those are Plymouthians. And every single ward is represented in our audience profile. Nearly a third of our visits are first-time visits to the venue. And more unusually and even more excitingly, 8% of our visits have never been to any kind of cultural venue before. We always set ourselves the goal of genuinely creating a new audience for culture. And it's so exciting to see that that's been reflected. Did you want to ask something?
I'm trying to get the... I'm just...
Yeah, I got you. I didn't know. Sorry. Okay, carry on.
Thank you. Also, the fact that we have an unusually high number of both under 25s and over 65s in our audience profile, particularly in terms of under 25s. That's quite unusual for a venue of our type. It obviously reflects the demographic of the city with a high number of students, but also, you know, it is fantastic that we are clearly relevant and of interest to that part of our population. In terms of motivations for visiting, as is quite the norm in museums and galleries around the country, a lot of people talk about how they want to come to the box to spend time with family and friends, but something else that's really heartwarming is the fact that so many of our visitors are really curious and really keen to learn, which is very much reflected in, you know, the vision and mission and values that we've laid out for the box as part of Plymouth City Council. So it's really lovely to see that being reflected in why people are visiting. Next slide, please. And in a little bit more detail, this gives you just a sense of what our audience profile is. I've touched on most of that already, but for example, we also know that, of course, our busiest times are things like summer holidays and half terms, but it's also of note that the programme itself and the amazing exhibitions that we put on are a genuine draw. You will see there that 89% of our visitors engage with at least one exhibition or display, and attendance very much spikes at the beginning of each exhibition. So we're not just driven by something to do in the school holidays. We are very much driven by people wanting to see the new thing that's on at the box. Next slide, please. so much of what we do contributes to Plymouth's overarching priorities and what's reflected in the Plymouth Plan. For example, in terms of how we are striving to help deliver the best outcomes for young people. Again, just hot off the press, we have already welcomed 78% of Plymouth schools to the box. That's more than 26,000 children and young people. And we are always looking at who isn't visiting and communicating with them directly, targeting the schools that haven't visited yet, because we want that to be 100%. Moreover, some schools undertake a self-guided visit and aren't necessarily sort of logged in this. So actually we do know from observation that more than 78% of schools have already engaged, but we're striving to make that 100%. But we're also very much a draw for the wider region. 42% of our school visits are from outside the city. And you may have already picked up, we are the best family attraction in Devon this year. As voted for by our visitors in the recent Muddy Stilettos Awards. And just to give you one statistic to illustrate the step change really in engagement, particularly with children and young people since we opened. In opening year, daily, when we were holding family activities, we would have on average less than 100 people, sort of 80, 90 people engaging in them. This year, more than 1,000 people habitually are engaging with any family activities we do in any given day. So there's been this enormous step change since we opened. And last year alone, we welcomed 27,000 new family visits. And overall, in terms of participation, not just visiting, but genuine engaging with an activity or a workshop, for example, nearly 90,000 members of our community have engaged. Next slide, please. It's also incredibly important to us, as it is to the city as a whole, to celebrate our diverse communities. And I've just given you a few examples here. Our temporary exhibition programme, of course, is very, very focused on artists from the global majority and, sort of, I suppose, introducing all of our visitors to a very world view. We're also working to interpret the city's amazing collections in new ways that are appropriate to the age in which we're living. We run a lot of events such as the Bazaar. The photo on the top left there is our extremely popular monthly Saturday market on Tavistock Place, which, working with Diversity Business Incubator, really celebrates some of the fantastic artists and musicians and makers and food producers that we have in the city. We have activities like Culture Club, currently working with members of the global majority community in the city to give people from diverse backgrounds the opportunity to genuinely influence what we do. And we have put a really big focus on working to diversify both our staff and our volunteer cohort and also train ourselves in diversity. Next slide, please. We also work hard to support the positioning of Plymouth as a major destination. This infographic gives you a sense of the impact that positive media coverage about the box for the city has. We generated more than £5.5 million worth of advertising equivalent positive coverage last year, with a reach of nearly 250 million people. Just one piece alone, which you may have seen on Hold the Front Page, the city's very own Gus Honeybun was celebrated, and that had a viewing figure of more than 3.4 million people. It's a bit of a strange one, this. We've just been recognised once more by Time Out as the country's most underrated destination. That in some ways is a wonderful thing, but in other ways, hell yeah, we just want to be rated, basically. But anyway, it's fabulous that we are recognised as somewhere that is amazing by such a major international publication. And we've just received the TripAdvisor Traveller's Choice Award this year as well. Next slide, please. Just touch very briefly on digital engagement. We are currently developing a new marketing and audiences strategy for the next 3 years. We've learnt a lot about our audiences. in terms of the research that we've done very lately, and we're really drilling down now into how we can even better engage with both new and potential audiences, and digital engagement and a sort of digital first approach is going to become ever more important. Next slide, please. I also wanted to give you a sense of some of the partnerships we're engaged in, all of which help make what we do happen. You'll see that we work very closely with local organisations such as Take a Part. I think particularly because of Victoria's contacts. We also have very, very rich and fruitful collaborations with the National Gallery, the National Portrait Gallery, the Royal Academy, Tate. Many of the shows that we get is as a result of those partnerships. But we're also working increasingly internationally as well. Next slide, please. And it's very important to us that we work with colleagues across the city to enhance the city's green credentials. For example, we have a rolling programme of carbon reduction projects. We went straight to the top when we entered the Green Tourism Awards. Our first result was going in at the gold level, which is the highest level. We're currently working on making biodiversity improvements to Tavistock Place, and we're rolling out carbon literacy training that a quarter of our staff have already undertaken. We're looking for that to be 100% of all staff. If you haven't already seen the current Planet Ocean exhibition, you really must take a look. We know that audiences are loving it, but it has a really strong story to tell around the climate crisis facing Britain's ocean city. We've got Beryl bikes, of course, in Tavistock Place, and increasingly we're working, for example, to recycle materials that we use in exhibitions. Next slide, please. So that's been a whistle-stop tour of last year. I'm going to hand over to our CEO, Victoria, now for a taste of what's next.
Thanks, Kate, and really lovely to be here again. I think I was here at this time last year. And there's not a huge amount more for me to say because Jemima and Kate have done a sterling job on really talking about what has happened over the past year. And it has been a tremendous year at the Box, and I think also a tremendous year for the city because the work of the cultural sector right across the city is amplifying and supporting the placemaking agendas for Plymouth, which, you know, for those of you who know me already, I'm a relatively newcomer to the city, and I do think it is one of the great cities of this country, and we all need to really get behind it and support it and see it as the flagship that it really is. So as Kate said, you know, the audience figures have been amazing. And this year we're looking at achieving a 275,000 figure, which hopefully we will achieve. Everything at the moment is pointing in the right direction. And in 25-26, we're looking at increasing that again to 300,000 visits. So there's a lot of work that goes on, as you've heard behind the scenes, to make sure that the programme is international in scope and really ambitious, but also that we get audiences who are local, regional, national and international. And I think sort of referring back to Kate mentioned how important it is to work to a vision. We have a very, very clear vision of where we want to be and get to. And we're really trying to get ourselves and our audiences to reimagine the future through the past. The city and the Box has these incredible collections. There's more than 2 million objects. And I think we need to just celebrate those and enable more audiences to see more of the collections that are in storage at the Box. So working with audiences is obviously really vital, and as Kate's mentioned, we're undertaking a major piece of work around our marketing and audiences strategy, and that is really informed by staff, but working with consultants who are experts in their field, and they have been really helpful and said to us, you know, you're starting from a very good place. So the work that we're going to be doing is really trying to look more in detail at the segmentation of the audience, but also, as Kate said, those audiences who aren't coming. Why aren't they coming? And what are some of the barriers to access for audiences across the city and beyond? And as Kate and Jemima have also mentioned, you know, looking at the social and economic impact is vital. The city has invested into the box, as have other agencies, including Arts Council England, and we need to be able to narrate the impact back. And you've seen today some of that impact, but I think there's also work to do around the social impact, and that's much harder to quantify. But there are experts out there, and we can work with colleagues in the university sector to really help us define the social impact. What does the box really add to? And I think quite often it's thinking about a long term. A child coming maybe aged 6 to the box, in 10, 20 years' time, their lives may have taken a completely different direction. They might have gone on to study an arts course to end up becoming a designer. Who knows? And I think that's really hard in terms of how we gain that data and that knowledge and are able to share it back. So sometimes I think it's worth just remembering that the impact sometimes takes quite a long time to reappear, as it were. We've also heard about how important having an ambitious programme is, and I think one of the aims for the future is really enabling more audiences to work on the programme. So looking at a co-curation model whereby local people from our local communities really input into the design and development of the programmes. That is a much slower process of working. It requires additional funding, and we're constantly, as you've heard out there, asking trusts and foundations, as well as people like Arts Council, for funding to enable more of that co-curation model to happen. So please do watch the space, but co-curation is really where we want to take the programme over the future years. But next year, and I have got another slide which I'll go on to just share what's coming up in the autumn, but we're working a long time in advance. So we are looking at the programme for 25, 26 and into 27 at the moment. And we've currently got new collaborations developing with the University of Manchester, with the Hepworth Gallery in Wakefield, with the British Council, with a gallery in Poland, with the National Gallery and the National Portrait Gallery. So those are all things that are coming up in 25, 26, 27. In terms of this autumn, we've got a really exciting programme, and there's a lovely slide on the screen at the moment of a work by JMW Turner. Tate have agreed to loan us a series of Turner watercolours and 4 Turner paintings, which we will juxtapose with some works by Ingrid Pollard. She was on the Turner Prize shortlist 2 Turner Prizes ago. These have been acquired, her works, for the box collection, so for the city collection, through the generosity of a funding from, get the name right, the Freelands Foundation. And we will be showing those alongside the work from Tate of Via Salmons, who's an artist who's based in New York. She makes fantastic prints, drawings, paintings about landscape and observations of nature. So there's a sort of theme running through the autumn around observations of nature. We're also part of a commissioning process with Imperial War Museum, and we are commissioning Paul Rooney, who's a Liverpool-based artist, as it happens, but he's got a national profile, who is working with veterans to make a new piece of work called Broken Token. That is mainly going to be a sound piece, so that will be in the North Hall this autumn. We're also celebrating Devonport 200, an incredible part of the city's history. So there will be a whole raft of material from the archive for viewers and visitors to look at. And we're working with the artist Osman Yousafzadeh, who's currently got work at this year's Venice Biennale called When Will We Be Good Enough, which is looking at issues of migration and colonialism, but looking at it from the perspective of having been born and raised in this country. So that's just a flavour of the programme, but we are also very keen to think about how we expand revenue, how we diversify what we do in terms of earned and fundraised income. We are, as you know from the papers, we have taken the catering in-house at the box. So it's how can we use that catering to grow income, but also to support our venue hire business. And September 2025 marks the 5th anniversary of the Box's opening. So I think we really want to celebrate the fact that the Box would have been in Plymouth, and over the year 25 into 26 is a real cause, a moment to celebrate all that has been achieved, but also looking at our cultural partners right across the city, because we know, and I'm sure you all know, about the numerous other national portfolio organisations that exist in the city, but there are so many artists, creatives doing fantastic work which support the richness and diversity of life here in the city. I think that's all I'll say for the moment, and we're very happy to take questions. Thank you.
I'm very grateful for those introductions. Thank you so much. Councillor Ricketts is first on the list.
Thank you, Chair. First and foremost, I think we can all just have an absolute love-in about how, amazing it is, and it's a jewel in the crown, especially being in Drake Ward, where, best ward in Plymouth and all the rest of it. But it's an absolute jewel, and David, obviously, I remember the very beginnings, your team was absolutely key to getting this done with all the funding that came in, so thank you. Your communication strategy is fantastic and on point. A lot of organisations could learn from how well you communicate on all sorts of forums. And I'm constantly amazed by how much is free there. I'm just blown away. I just think, how is this happening? I use it myself, the kids use it, it's great. We know it's fantastic, but I was just interested in, I often sit opposite, because there's a bar opposite, and there's people that walk past. So I know the numbers are incredible, but we always want to improve. How do we get those people that live on even streets that are very, very close, or walk past and never think about coming in? Because it's not your fault. It's a fantastic, fully spec venue. They may feel it's not for them, or it's a bit intimidating, or it's not a venue they would go to. How do you look at that, trying to get all different people through that building to enjoy the experience?
Excellent question. And thank you for your kind words as well. As I briefly mentioned, we've spent the summer beginning the process of developing a new marketing and audiences strategy for the next 3 years. And one of the things we've done is do guided visits with non-visitors. So we took various groups from older people, families with children, and younger people as well. And we've learnt so much about those very barriers to attendance that you've discussed. And I think we've learned partly that there is still work to be done to properly land the Box amongst non-visitors. In some cases, there is awareness, but there isn't enough of a sense of what's there for them, how is it relevant, and there's much more work we can do, I think, to communicate sort of little tasters to get people, because once visitors come in, they are always struck by how big it is, how massive the collections are, the wow factor, but actually we're not communicating that well enough outside. So the 5th anniversary next year is a brilliant opportunity to do that. But we've also learned a lot about how much harder we need to work externally, even as you say in the in Tavistock Place with our building dressing. How we need to work harder to animate that space. You may have noticed that we've put in new banners and much more building dressing for the current exhibition for the first time, which has actually increased the conversion rate to, it's nearly doubled the conversion rate of St Luke's already just with that work. So I suppose in essence, yes, we've connected with a lot of visitors, but the whole point of reviewing our marketing and audiences strategy at this key pivotal moment in our development is to think, okay, who haven't we landed with yet? What are the barriers to attendance? What is it that we need to really focus on in terms of our communications? Who are our target audiences with the best opportunity for further growth? And what are our strategies to respond to that, I suppose? So this time next year, we're very much looking forwards to sharing with you how that's worked, how that's gone.
Yeah, Kate said most of what I was going to say, but I think the marketing strategy stuff will really inform about not just who's coming, so who's not coming, But actually that 8% figure of the box being people's first ever cultural experience is, as I understand it, is quite high. So it shows that we are getting people in who might not normally think a place like that is for them. But you're absolutely right on that challenge. And it's something that we are all challenging ourselves on, because it's, it's great that we're attracting people from outside Plymouth and all the rest of it. But for me, it's a Plymouth institution, and I want every Plymouthian to feel it's somewhere that they belong and they can go. And I go back to the I Wonder group, where there were loads of under fives who clearly feel that building belongs to them, and hopefully they'll grow into people who will bring other people there with that real clear feeling there's no barrier for them to walk through the door. So we still have work to do on it, but it is a priority for us, because we need everybody that we think would like to come in there to have no barrier to doing that.
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to offer my congratulations on what you've done. I think it's fantastic. As a Plymouthian of 60 years, I was a little concerned when I found out that people were going to be messing around my beloved museum, and I'm delighted that the facade at the front hasn't changed. I'm going to be contributing to the ever-growing audience next week. Never underestimate the power of peer pressure when you're coming to advertising. But my question, I also wanted to congratulate you on the scope of your ambitions. Forgive me. I think what you're trying to do is fantastic. My question is quite mediocre in comparison to what you've managed to achieve, but it's for clarification. Councillor Lang mentioned match funding when she spoke initially, and I'm curious, where does that match funding come from? Thank you.
So I think rather than use I don't know if you use the term match, but I think about it as how we lever in additional funding from other places through the investment that the City Council makes in the box. So the City Council invests annually in the box, which we are hugely grateful for. And as Jemima said, many councils at the moment are reducing their level of support for culture and heritage. Plymouth is bucking the trend, happily for us, but I think also because of that, the Arts Council supports us as a national portfolio organisation to the tune of, I think it's £1.2 million every year, which, again makes a massive difference, and we're again very grateful to the Arts Council. But when we are applying for funding from trusts and foundations, which we do on a regular basis, and it is getting much more competitive because more and more people, organisations, are desperate for cash, then we're using that funding to leverage in other funds. We got some money from the Esme Fairburn, we've just had some money coming through from the Henry Moore Foundation. So that, I think, funders want to fund organisations that they know are viable and that they know have got some support around them. So to my mind, leveraging in the funding, and we do that to the tune of, I think we worked it out as about £2 million, is a great return on the investment. And then on top of that, there are all the other ways that that funding supports agendas, as Jemima mentioned, about health and well-being, learning, education, skills and training.
May I just give the council's budget bit? That might just help, because obviously the box is sort of it has some independence in the way it operates. So, but fundamentally, the deal we did when we built it, in terms of the revenue budget that went through the full council, was that we'd have the same revenue budget as we did for the old museum. So that was effectively the arrangement. So to make that work, we had to significantly increase the Arts Council's contribution through the MPO from where it was to where it is, so that doubled. And the team had to earn basically 900,000 earned income that didn't exist, which is what they have done. And then what Victoria's describing is beyond that, all the extra work that's coming in for the projects beyond the core budget. So the way to think about it is we haven't put any more money in from the old museum, but we've now got something that's 3 times as big, which is really down to the creativity of these people on my right.
Thanks, David. Councillor McLeay.
Thank you, Chair. I have a few, but I appreciate we may be running late on time, so I'll ask one, then we can always come back if we have space. I love the box. it really fizzes with this like dynamic, kind of forward-looking atmosphere. And I think that's a real credit to the staff, the building, the relationships with the local council. So big congratulations. I think what you've achieved is amazing. I wanted to pick up on food particularly, and I think it shows an incredible amount of flexibility to take your catering facilities in-house in 2 days. That's an incredible achievement. I wanted to ask how your food offering is contributing to your sustainability aims and if that's part of the goals going forward.
No, really nice question, thank you. We originally worked with a third-party catering provider, and when we wrote the spec for that process to select a provider, we were incredibly stringent on the asks we made around sustainability, and we ensured, for example, that it was an entirely there were no single-use plastics in the offer, that local suppliers were sourced, and we championed that approach throughout our relationship with the third party. So when we really quite rapidly took it in-house at the beginning of this calendar year, obviously it was very, very important to us to maintain those, and actually having more control over the offer has given us much more control over working with local suppliers, to the extent that Victoria and I are quite obsessed with great bread, for example. So we're able to connect with Jack Bakery and genuinely local suppliers like that. We've always run the shop, and from day one we were very hardcore about, for example, having absolutely no single-use plastic in the shop. We've worked with suppliers who use plastic in their packaging materials to say we won't stock you unless you change that, for example. We're now able to be that hardcore in terms of sustainability around the catering offer. So we're still in the process of making that a long-term arrangement to bring it sort of in-house, but we're really, really excited about the opportunity to grow and develop the overall offer into one that we're massively proud of.
I wasn't going to talk about that. I was going to just add to what you were saying about the kind of vibe and buzz. And yes, that's down to incredible staff. But I also want to mention the volunteers, because the team of volunteers are extraordinary. Really, we have a counsellor who's among the volunteers at the box, and they really contribute to the welcome. And again, going back to your question about barriers coming in, if you get a great welcome when you come to somewhere that you might not be sure about, then that is one hurdle that you've already passed. So I wanted to also mention and pay tribute to the volunteers who are incredible.
Thank you. Councillor McCarthy.
Yeah, no, box is fantastic. I can't believe almost 5 years. I think the genius stroke with that is that it's sort of filled a missing gap within tourism within the city, and you have seen over recent years, the quality that that's delivered and the pride that that has built. My question comes to the point around young people. 26,000 young people coming through the doors is phenomenal. One of the challenges with tourist attractions is maintaining those numbers. So I guess sort of an open question to sort of how you hope to sort of continue to engage and grow that audience with surrounding areas.
No, very good question, because we know that quite often when places open, they sort of peak and then they go down. So I think it's, we're still aiming to grow a bit. We think that's still possible, but then there will be a plateauing effect. But I think it's really important for us, the marketing and audiences work we're currently undertaking, about the segmentation and being clear about who are the audiences we really want to get. And children and young people are incredibly important, and that will continue to be the case. So how we work with schools, how we work with FE and HE in the city is vital. And I don't know if you're aware, but and I think it was in the in the report, but we've recently run a competition for children and young people, which brought in, I think, around 300 entries. It is an initiative with Arts University Plymouth, but we hope to grow that because actually enabling people, children and young people, to have those opportunities and for their work to be shown in the box is really, I mean, it's really aspirational. And I think if we can grow that, that is a way of engaging long term. But also I think we had the opening of For the Time Is Always Now, which opened on the 29th of June to the public. But at the opening, where Echo Eshen came and introduced the exhibition, he's the curator of the show, he's a leading author and broadcaster. At that event, we had some of those children and young people alongside leading artists in the show, and the mix of people and the diversity of that audience was incredible. So I think, you know, that's how we want to create that buzz and fizz. But you're absolutely right. It's important really to work on an ongoing basis with schools, with families, to enable children and young people really to access what we have at the box, because it's so fantastic in terms of learning. And what the research tells us is that quite often children and young people find museums and galleries easier places to learn in than they might do being in a box classroom somewhere. So I think we can provide and amplify and enhance that learning experience in formal education. So that's really important. And we have a schools officer, and that's his job. He works with schools.
Well, I was going to talk about the aspects of it being free and the Time Is Always Now exhibition that is there now, which you could see in London, you could see in Plymouth, and then it's going to America, is free in London. There was a cost for it. It's free in Plymouth, free for all. And also I was going to talk about the competition, which Victoria's talked about, but I would urge you to go and have a look. The entries are displayed in the Bridge Gallery, and Paul Fields and Danks from the Arts University at the opening told a story about how he as a child had entered a competition, a big art competition, Cadbury Arts. Now he was somebody who came from a family who did take him to arts venues, but George Shaw, who had an exhibition at the box year before last, he also was a winner at the Cadbury art exhibition, and he'd never been to a gallery before he won that prize. So I just thought that was a really interesting anecdote about the impact of taking part in a competition. We're really thrilled with how many children and young people took part. I'm really hoping it's something we can continue with the Arts University, and it's another way of engaging children and young people in what's going on at the box.
Councillor Rainsford.
Thank you. Two quick questions. One is, could you tell us, please, how the membership scheme is going? Because I can't find figures in there, but they're probably buried somewhere. And the second thing is about archive use. I was chatting to a local business in my ward this morning, and he sees the box as a wonderful resource for archive material that will help support him in his business. And I just wondered what the are there any records kept about who comes in with archive requests?
Thank you for that question. And we should have possibly talked more about the archive, because it is incredible. Not only is it a paper archive, but it's a film archive too. We do have stats on who comes in, but off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you. So we'll have to come back to you on that, if that's all right. And I'm going to hand over to Kate to deal with the membership, because yes, the membership information should be on the website. So I'm slightly concerned if you haven't been able to find it. But Kate will talk to you a bit about the figures and how we're trying to grow membership.
Thank you. Did you mean you couldn't find information about the levels of membership, or you couldn't find how to join?
Yes, it's levels of membership since it opened.
Absolutely, yeah. It's an area that needs more attention, if I'm honest. We have recently done a kind of soft relaunch of the membership scheme, but at the moment we only have about, I think it's 180 members. So there is significant room for growth there. And we were very clear at the beginning of this process to develop a new marketing and audiences strategy that one of the sort of outcomes of that needs to be a review of the membership scheme. And as part of this process, we are targeting a particular segment of our audience who we know are quite regular repeat visitors, and we're going to pitch membership as a way of sort of engaging with us on that next level up and that next level up. So it's definitely an area that needs attention at the moment. It's not one of our better performing areas in terms of income generation, but we know, I think through this process of developing the new marketing and audiences strategy, we will have a much clearer plan as to how we're going to address that and how we're going to increase engagement through the membership scheme.
I just add something quickly about the membership. When we first started all those years ago, I think there was a model in place that we charged for certain exhibitions. And that was in the business model. And so this show that is now here, we'd have charged, I think we charged for the Sunrise exhibition, I think, when we first opened, and Mayflower. And we quickly learned that the marginal income gain that we got from charging for a show was not the right way to do it with the extra visitor numbers and what they might pay per head. So there was, it wasn't, you know, even the administration of it. So I think our original thought process was membership with a mechanism, you know, in the way the theatre hall works. The theatre hall's model is that everything's around, they know who their customers are, they repeat the customers, it's database led. And there is something in my mind about, you know, membership sort of is about, you know, am I in the gang and do I have to join? And I think where we've got to is that there clearly is a membership offer that we have to redefine, because there isn't, you know, you're not going to get 10% off something that's free. And there's also something about, you know, you don't have to be a member to join. So I think probably for us, in all honesty, where we started, it needs almost, there's an added value piece for those that want more, for sure. But on the other hand, we've made it so beautifully free, and that's hard fought, that the idea that that's, you know, so I think we've probably just got to figure that out, if I'm honest with you, and I think we're probably in the middle of that. So I don't see it perhaps as something that you know is a black mark on our book. I think it's actually the model's gone in a different route, would be my sense.
No, I was just going to say, I think the museum has evolved in a way that sort of makes the current membership scheme almost unnecessary. She says as a member. I'm just not sure what the benefits potentially could be of being a member.
Hopefully. But I think quite a lot of organisations are sort of really rethinking membership around having a free offer, and how you talk about becoming a member in a very different way, which is, I think, really what David's saying. So I think there are ways forward, and I think we need to do further benchmarking. And I think it's also, we have a Box Foundation, which is our charitable arm. If we can drive membership through the Box Foundation, which we currently don't do, there may be ways of thinking about membership as philanthropic, but also as being supporting the entire initiative. So I don't think it's impossible to have a membership scheme, even if you have a free offer.
I think it's something that we as a panel might want to look at maybe later in the year, so just keep that thought in your mind. I have two speakers left on my list. Kevin Sproston. Councillor Sproston.
Thank you. Where to begin? I was one of the ones lucky enough to actually be on the previous scrutiny. And when you came up last time, I was like, those figures are amazing. Surely we're going to hit a plateau, and I would expect to see some sort of dip. But the figures have just kept on rising and rising, and that is such a credit. With that in mind, and this question might be a little premature, but it's, especially for an operation that's been going less than 5 years. But for myself, I think you've done so well. I'm interested in the sense of this being a markable model, maybe potentially on an international international scale. If we look at the strategy, research, execution, which I think has been knocked out the park completely, I'm just interested to see if there is some sort of case studies and research going on for the future in case this, in how you developed this, could be something that could be looked at for other places in the country, or, like I say, marketed on an international scale.
So I think it's a good question. People constantly come and ask, come to Plymouth and say, we're really interested in what's happening in Plymouth. And I'm sure David can give you countless examples of delegates from all around the country, but also all around the world, who are interested in what's happening here in terms of transformation and regeneration, and particularly how we use culture to lead that. So, but whether it's marketable in that sense of can we charge for it, I don't know. In previous roles, I have actually been able to go off and do consultancy. So if someone comes and approaches us, I wouldn't say no. I think it's just, getting that offer, as it were. But I think generally in the sector, people are very generous and supportive. So the audience work that we've talked about quite a lot today, we need to do some benchmarking. So we need to go to other organisations and say, can you give us your information about visit numbers, about spend, about who your audiences are? And we're asking for that for free. So there's something about a generosity that needs to happen. And I think the other thing to say is that in the sector, most people know one another quite well. It's a very small world that we inhabit. But would we be, should we be thinking like Eden Project about rolling out projects around the globe? Probably not at the moment, but never say never.
Jemima, and then David, thanks.
Yeah, I just want to give an example. I'm on the Local Government Association Culture, Tourism and Sport Board, and we brought everybody down here for a day to have one of our quarterly meetings in Plymouth, so that they could see what we've got here. And also, David was very generous with his, the narrative of how the box came about and all the rest of it. So it was sharing with local government colleagues who are interested in this sector about what we've done and how we've done it. And I guess there's a kind of final thought about what I think about the box. Since having this role, I have lots of people who will say to me, yeah, Plymouth's really punching above its weight, isn't it? And I said, no, I really loathe that phrase. We're not punching above our weight, actually. We're having what we as Plymothians are entitled to. We've got a world-class institution in our city. We're entitled to have that. There's no punching above our weight. We are where we should be. And I feel really, really proud of that. And yes, I get the visitor numbers in the future. There might be a plateau because, there's only so many people in the world. But that doesn't take away from, the incredible figures that we have so far, this incredibly positive report, your incredibly positive response. It's something that we just all can be hugely proud of.
So I would answer the question by reflecting back to you that it ultimately is your success, because if you go back to, we've been doing joint cross-party scrutiny here for, crikey, 2014, maybe before, and we've held that cross-party approach. And actually most local authorities around the country are having a kind of a more existential conversation about, is culture worth it? Is it worth the investment? You've held your nerve, you've invested, you haven't compromised when you could. So, when it came to the moment of should we, I remember it, should we not have the figurehead? Should we not do St. Luke? Shall that be a phase 2? You pushed on. That's why you've been successful. And the Arts Council fundamentally have a simple mantra, which is they will support local authorities that invest in culture. So your collective belief in creating the space for this investment, and on the back of that, we attract the talent, in terms of Kate Victoria, you can make that true. But if you hadn't have made any of that decision, or if you'd have compromised it, or you'd done it at 80% or 50%, I'm absolutely convinced we wouldn't be here having this conversation. So I think actually the answer to your question is, what is the learning? It's the fact that this city's put culture at the front. And it's really fascinating because, budget scrutiny is the conversation about culture competing against, over the years, all the other agendas, whether it's outsourced care or children's services. What we haven't done that here. What we say is culture is the thing that can support and help those areas. And that's really unique because you're not actually pitching culture as it's either this or this. You're saying culture is the solution. Culture is the thing that can help. It's the thing that can do placemaking generation. For me, if there's one thing that's been recognised, the Arts Council have written a case study on that. The LGA have written a case study on that. That's so actually, generously, it's not our success. It's actually your success. And that goes back to 2014. And if there's one thing I'm proud of, is that we managed to take that trust and do something with it, because that's it's been a great thing.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway.
Thank you. Great presentations, and I am so delighted that the Vox is in Drake Ward. I know Steve and I, secretly kind of going, yeah, that's in our ward. But not just the Jewel and the Crown Ward, but the whole city, of the whole region, of the whole country. Look, there is a changing external environment when it comes to funding arts organisations. Getting in kind of match fit position for the MPO applications in 2026 is going to be a big moment. Can you share a little bit more about preparations? And I know we're short on time, so it doesn't have to be a long answer. Firstly, what we're doing to get match fit for 2026 and that renewal time, kind of what's keeping you up most at night? Because everything's been so positive, there must be something that's keeping you up at night. And finally, it's been a lot about making the Box kind of talk about what you've done, which has all been great, but what more can the City Council and other key institutions be doing to support the Box? And that's kind of 3 in 1, which is very naughty when it's been a long session. I'm sorry.
Well, I'll start and then hand over and go down the line, as it were. So in terms of MPO, you're absolutely right. So there's an extension into 26, 27. So we, as I understand it so far, we should get some guidance out next spring about the bidding process, which will probably be the end of 2025 calendar year into the beginning of 2026. I think the audience and marketing work is absolutely vital in terms of getting us ready for the MPO. So that will really help address some of the issues that Arts Council are really interested in. They want to know that arts organisations are working with their communities and that they really reflect on what communities want, and they want us to engage with those inverted commas hard to reach stroke underrepresented individuals. So I think we are getting ready. We're also going through a huge amount of change and transformation as an organisation. We are bringing new people in. We've recruited a new head of collections and programme, which is a new role, really to look at making sure that the collection is well looked after in terms of accreditation, which is also something that the Arts Council has oversight on, but also that we're using more of that collection in new and different ways. So I think we're shifting, the makeup of the staff as well and the volunteers, and really starting, to drill down into our vision and values and making sure that we are ready as an organisation and that we can be agile, because we don't know what's coming around the corner and things are changing very, very quickly. So I think, being able to be as agile as possible is absolutely key. In terms of the City Council, for me, the City Council has been really ambitious in how it thinks about culture. And, I quite often say to colleagues, culture isn't the icing on the cake, it's a key ingredient in the cake. And I think if you can own that and really sort of champion that, that's going to be extremely helpful going forwards. But also I think, culture is a driver for economic success. So in the economic strategies, and we've seen it, it's in there, culture really needs to be embedded and hard baked into that too. So I think, you know, the City Council has, you know, it's been an exemplar in how it's looked at culture, and not just the box. There are a whole other raft of organisations across the city that benefit from the support of the City Council. But I think it's how you champion what we do in your wards amongst the people you come into contact day in, day out, that can be so powerful and so helpful. And there was another question.
What keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night? Well, lots of things. You know, even sort of, I think how we're perceived in the city is really important, and how we engage with communities. And we've always got so many things we want to do. And sometimes, you know, the worst thing is not having enough time to deliver all of those things. So time, and then I guess linked to that is money, because sometimes things can only happen because of money, and how we prioritise what we do and make sometimes some quite difficult decisions about doing this as opposed to doing that. But, you know, it's a fantastic place to work, and I love being here in Plymouth and leading the box and working with a great team of staff and volunteers, but also all of you. And I know that, you know, I know many of you who are sitting around this table, but it's great to have supporters who live and breathe the life of the city. So thank you.
Thank you. John, did you want to come in on that?
Only just to say, I think that what we can do as councillors is be advocates, whether that's going to the box, whether that's telling people about the box, whether that's sharing on social media that these amazing exhibitions that are only coming to Plymouth before they go elsewhere in the world, that they're free, that the family stuff, especially the stuff that's going to be running over the summer, become members, you know, just if you can. It's just being advocates and ambassadors, and taking Victoria's point about it being a key ingredient in the cake, not the icing. You know, in lots of places you have to keep arguing about why you're not cutting it. And for me, everywhere I go, I say I don't see it as this low-hanging fruit that I know a lot of other places do. That's where they'll go first, where they need to save money. That's not how we're approaching it, because of all the things that Victoria and Kate and David have talked about. So I think it's about us as members, which is clear today, being incredibly proud of this place and what it does for our residents, and just sharing it as much as we can, shouting about it and being ambassadors for everything that's going on there now and everything that's going to go on there in the future.
Thank you, Jemima. Councillor Holloway's just reminded me, there is a tour, is there not, for councillors on Friday, 11:30, is that right? It's on Friday, which is a great opportunity, obviously, for councillors to pick up the mantle and be advocates if and avail of that opportunity. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, it's a point of order. Just because it was mentioned by Victoria, I just need to disclose an interest that I work for the Eden Project, just to be safe.
Yeah, that's been recorded. Thank you very much. On behalf of the panel, may I thank you very much for your attendance. As been said, I shan't repeat it too many times. Excellent work that's going on in the box. Long may it continue and continue to improve. And thank you so much for your presentations today. It's been very interesting. Thank you for your attending. Members, next on the list is item number 10, tracking decisions. Yes, thank you, Hannah.
Just to give members some context on why it's so long, the select committee review that was done into water quality, those recommendations had to go on to tracking somewhere, and because that select committee had come from this scrutiny committee, they're being followed on there. You will note a lot of them are complete, so they'll come off for next time, but there were also several letters that were due to be written to national government, and then very quickly we had a general election announced. So you can appreciate that several of the actions are a little delayed, more than normal because of that.
Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chair. Just pick up on 3 of those tracking decisions. So there's mention of winter pilots in bathing areas that couldn't be carried out by, I can't remember who the regulator is, but there was a suggestion that Plymouth City Council Public Health team take up that mantle. Is that being followed up, or is that something we need to chase? There's also a chase on.
Minute 5, yeah?
Yes, yeah. So that's the Environment Agency. Oh, sorry.
So no, I can see which one you're referring to. So that is something that I can absolutely chase up for you. That's not a problem.
Page 77. Yeah, sorry, the centre one on page 77.
The centre one, yeah. So basically, the reason that's marked as complete was because that's what Cabinet said would happen. But if you'd like me to chase it up, I absolutely can.
Thank you. And then also the page 78, the top one, there was a chase for improved signage to be advertised as when the storm drains have discharged. Have you had a response from that one?
No. The reason there's been a little bit of a delay with the public protection ones, basically because we didn't go directly to, the recommendation wasn't initially made to the right department. So that one and the previous one that was supposed to go to trading standards, I'm talking to them at the moment and I expect to get an update soon.
Fantastic, thank you. And then sorry, finally on page 80, it's marked as complete and it says that some improvements were carried out before the start of the bathing season 2024. I'm just wondering if we could have details of the improvements that were carried out.
I can certainly ask.
Thank you, that'd be
and
great.
get those circulated, no problem.
Councillor Rainsford.
Thank you. Minute 63, the full report regarding the aborted start to Old Town Street and New George Street projects. Both of those areas are progressing really well. Is there any way we can find out how close we are to actually getting that report?
Once the scheme's completed, because the focus at the moment is on completion, when it's complete, we'll look at that. Yeah, thank you. And the due date for completion is everything should be off-site by the end of October. Just so.
Any more on that? Great, and obviously that should be a smaller number next time because of the legacy items. Excellent, thank you very much. I should have said actually the last agenda item we were to note the report, so it was only for noting. Yeah, thank you. So the minutes can reflect that. Last tracking decisions. We're now on the final agenda item, almost an hour over time, but there we are. Work programme. Again, over to you, Hannah.
I was going to say I haven't got anything to add on this one, particularly. I don't know if Anthony does. It's obviously we've taken, with working with the chair, taken what was on the to be scheduled for this year from the previous committee, and tried to populate those meetings as much as possible.
Yeah, so we set this agenda or this work programme when we met many weeks ago, I can't remember. But in light of today's scrutiny committee, I'm looking at next month's meeting, which is October's meeting, which is a very heavy agenda. So I will have to marshal a lot more strictly in terms of how we canter through that with giving fair time for scrutiny. So October is rather completed. So there's no appetite to add anything to the agenda going into the rest of this year. Should the opportunities arrive, it'll be February onwards. Unless councillors have got any burning desire to add something that's not there. Councillor McKay.
It's not to add, it is to ask that in the December meeting under the culture plan, we have an opportunity to look at how summer sessions performed as part of that culture plan update.
Anything else in regard to the work programme? No.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. I also wondered if for a future item, I appreciate we're quite busy for the next few meetings, whether we should look at sustainable transport as an agenda item as a whole, so taking in walking, cycling, looking at how Beryl and the car hire scheme have performed, as well as bus. So just looking a bit more of that as a holistic item.
Well, I'm wondering, could that go in after the February there's still a lot to be confirmed. So the one after February before, well, there's no election next year, so that could go in March, April type.
You could also, Chair, if obviously this is down to your discretion as a panel, if there's no election next year, you could put an additional meeting in, if you wanted to.
Yeah. Hannah will make a note of that, and we can revisit that at the next meeting. But in the absence of an election next year, we're not cobbled by Purda, so we can have another meeting. Yeah, brilliant. Any more? That's great. Thank you so much. That was a long meeting for your first meeting, particularly for those who haven't sat on these kind of things before. Thank you so much for your engagement, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.